Meet some of the more than 1.5 million members of Moms Clean Air Force who are united in taking action to protect clean air and children's health. Founded in 2011, we are the largest and most influential climate and clean air movement led by moms, dads, and caregivers. In 2017, we launched our Latino community outreach program, EcoMadres. We connect science and data with real people. We make clear why everyone should care about climate disruption, air pollution, toxic chemicals, including petrochemicals, how they harm our bodies and our minds, why they are so dangerous. We demand action and justice in every breath. We open doors at every level of government and agencies such as the Environmental Protection Agency so they can hear from our members. We are highly effective. We have field organizers and members in states across the country. Together, we are securing vital health protections for families everywhere through persistent action, including thousands of messages to Congress and regulatory agencies, hundreds of public hearings, press conferences, congressional office visits, community engagement, media outreach, and more. We tell Washington, listen to your mothers, and they are listening. More importantly, they are acting. We have made amazing progress in our fight, but we have more to do. Our work is never done. Protections aren't strong enough until every family is safe. Moms Clean Air Force mobilizes parents and caregivers using the most precious and renewable resource of all, love. Moms will do everything to keep children safe, and we are uniting to take action that ensures a better future for everyone. Join us.
Sí. Good morning, everyone. If you haven't taken a seat, please feel free to take a seat wherever you would like. Bienvenidos a todos. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate every single one of you guys today. We're here, whether you're joining us here in person or tuning in virtually. Welcome to the second annual EcoMadres Summit. This is a powerful gathering of mothers, advocates, health professionals, and community leaders united by a shared mission to protect the health of our families and the future of our planet. My name is Mary Wagner. I am the Nevada Field Coordinator for Moms Clean Air Force. I'm so honored to serve you today as your MC. A big thank you to Make the Road Nevada for opening their doors to us to host this gathering today. And to Chispa, Nevada. Yes. And to Chispa, Nevada, our longtime and strong partner in this fight for climate justice. We are so grateful to stand together in community. We're proud to be coming together here in Las Vegas at the intersection of culture, community, and climate action, right in the heart of Latino Conservation Week and just ahead of Latino Heritage Month. These moments are more than symbolic. They're a reminder that our communities are rich with resilience, creativity, and leadership, and that we must be included not just as stakeholders, but as decision makers in the fight for climate justice. Today's summit, led by EcoMadres, the Latino engagement program of Moms Clean Air Force, is about just that, uplifting Latina voices, honoring lived experience, and forging solutions to the environmental challenges our communities face every single day. From extreme heat and petrochemical pollution to rising energy costs and unjust policy. Throughout this morning, you'll hear from doctors, organizers, policymakers, storytellers, and mothers who are not just only naming the injustice, but also lighting the path forward. We'll have honest conversations, celebrate bold leadership, and end with a little bit of joy, because joy, too, is a form of resilience. Finally, to anyone who needs official interpretation will be provided today by Annabelle Granados in the back. Thank you so much, Annabelle. Appreciate it. And now I want to thank everyone for coming together to hold this space. I would like to introduce to you guys my colleague, Shayna Olivers, to the stage.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, everyone, for coming together and holding this space. I'm Shayna Oliver, Field Coordinator for Moms Clean Air Force in EcoMadres, Colorado. I'm an Indigenous people's rights advocate for tribal sovereignty, working to ensure future generations can access sacred sites where our ancestors thrived in hunting grounds, fishing sites, fishing routes, and gathering sites for nutrients and medicine, environments that sustain us with clean air, water, and our protection for our children's health. I'm a mom of 4 and I'm a wife, and my family and I are enrolled members of the Navajo Nation of New Mexico. We live in Denver, Colorado, where I work on tribal air programs with the National Tribal Air Association, focusing on environmental justice, toxic air pollution, public health, and actions we can take to confront climate change. I will now begin the land acknowledgement. Moms Clean Air Force acknowledges the ancestral lands of 574 tribal nations, federally recognized to the lands that are known as the United States, and recognizes that not all tribal nations have been granted federal recognition. Today, here in Nevada, we acknowledge we are on the ancestral lands of 5 major tribal nations that make up Nevada's 28 federally recognized tribal nations. And we honor the Washoe, the Western Shoshone, the Southern Paiute, and the Fort Mojave. We now welcome a special message from Nevada's State Secretary Cisco Aguilar.
Hello, I'm Cisco Aguilar, your Secretary of State. Thank you to EcoMadres, Moms Clean Air Force, for all the work you did to put this conference together. We know that climate change is occurring, and we know that it impacts our Latino community. In northern Nevada, we're experiencing wildfires. In Las Vegas, we're experiencing extreme heat. We know that we need the environment to survive, and we know the environment is important to our families, because we do believe in Mother Earth and we do need to protect it. So thank you for all the work you're doing. Enjoy the summit, and let's go take some action.
Thank you to Secretary Aguilar for those words. It's now my pleasure to introduce Karine Steen, Director of Música, and her band Son Tierra. Their music highlights the cultural power of art in the climate movement, carrying stories, resilience, and a call to protect our planet. Please join me in welcoming Karine and Son Tierra.
Muchísimas gracias. Soy Karin Stein, soy colombiana. I'm Karin Stein, I'm Colombian. I'm Iowa organizer for EcoMadres and Moms Clean Air Force. I'm also the director of Son Tierra. Son Tierra means we are of the earth, or we are the earth. It also means the sound of the earth, or the music of the earth. And Son Tierra was started with the support of Moms Clean Air Force and EcoMadres. As a Latin American musician, I view music as a language, and I don't just mean the lyrics of words. Music is cultural coding. Music is cultural identity. And EcoMadres has included music as a tool to build trust among Latinos and Latinas, because if they recognize something we play in themselves, they know we belong. And even though I'm the lead composer in Son Tierra, this would be nothing without my amazing colleagues. So let me just introduce Marianne.
Hello, my name is Marian Vivas. Soy Marian Vivas. I'm from Caracas, Venezuela. I play the Venezuelan cuatro and the flute, and I'm part of Some Tierra because I believe that my environmental message can reach people's hearts through music.
And now we have Sol.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sol Barisco. I'm originally from Argentina, but I live in Iowa for 20 years. I teach biodanza, and in biodanza, we teach that life goes to the center. So I sing with this group to remind everyone that life is for all beings, and music brings people together. So we want to make sure we keep the environment that we live in.
Muchísimas gracias, Sol. Tenemos a Gaby.
Hola, mi nombre es Gabriela Valdivia. Hi, my name is Gabby Valdivia. My mom is Brazilian and my dad is Mexican, and I was born in Iowa. I sing with Son Tierra because I want to help the animals with extreme climate and heat.
And we have Valentina.
Hola, mi nombre es Valentina del Carmen Weischermeister. Hi, my name is Valentina. Yo estoy representando Puerto Rico y México. And I sing with Son Tierra because just like the generations before me, I want my generation's environmental safety to be protected.
We have Leo.
Hello, my name is Leo Roldan. I'm currently living in Dubuque, Iowa, but I'm from Buenos Aires in Argentina. I play with Son Tierra because of my passion to fight for a healthy planet and to raise awareness about climate change.
And we have Edgar.
Buenas tardes. My name is Edgar East, and I am from Panama. I was born and raised there, and I believe in music. Music is a universal language. La música es un lenguaje universal. The right song at the right time can change hearts. La canción correcta en el momento correcto puede cambiar el corazón de una persona. And I think of my future, my children. Pienso en mis hijos, and I think about our children, sus hijos. Por eso canto con Son Tierra.
And finally, we have Edgar.
Hello, everyone. My name is Edgar Solis. I'm from Mexico, and I work as a minister in the United Methodist Church there in Iowa. And part of my work is education and awareness. So many of us have, I believe that many of us in our society have misinterpreted that religion and science don't mix. But let me tell you this, people of faith care for creation. Les quiero decir que la gente que tiene fe también cuida de la creación. Yo soy una persona que trabaja para la Iglesia Metodista y colaboro con Son Tierra por muchas razones. But let me read you a quote from a guy who is a environmental lawyer. His name is James Gustav, and he's an advocate for environmental change. And he said this. He said once that I used to think the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystems collapse, and climate change. The top environmental problems really are selfishness, greed, and apathy. This is what Gustav says. So we need a change in approach, and that is where my mission as an educator, as a people of faith have, and my mission also comes in playing with Son Tierra to kind of spread awareness about these important matters. Thank you.
Y como les dije, yo soy colombiana. Ever since I held my firstborn, I became aware that I had at that moment become every child's mother. My musical identity is almost as close to my heart as my girls are. And if I don't use every one of my talents and every one of my recourses to fight for this earth, then what am I doing on this planet? So let's sing a song together. How's that? I wrote this song thinking of my mom and her cradling me. And it says, my mom used to cradle me without knowing what my worries would be, without knowing what my song would be. Today we sing for Mother Earth because she needs to be cradled. She's screaming for help so she can heal to help us survive. And there's a part, I wrote this in a call and response. Can you sing Mamita eh?
Mamita, eh.
Mamita eh.
Mamita, eh.
Repeat. Mamita eh.
Mamita, eh.
Mamita eh.
Mamita, eh.
Now it gets interesting. Mamita eh. Mamita eh. Mamita eh. Mamita eh. Mamita eh.
Mamita,
Mamita
eh.
eh.
Mamita, eh.
Mamita eh.
Mamita, eh.
We'll wing it together. ¿Ya? Dale. Mamita eh, mamita 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 everybody.
Mamita 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 mamita
Mamita mamita mamita mamita mamita Mi mamá me arrullaba con su canto, mi mamá me arrullaba en su manto y me mecía sin saber lo que hoy en día sería mi llanto, sería mi canto. Mamita 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 mamita
Este arrullo es para la madre tierra. Hoy este arrullo es para la madre tierra que tiene fiebre y no la escuchan en su agonía,
Crank up those volume.
Mamita 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 mamita
Nuestra madre nos mece todo el día. Nuestra madre nos mece todo el día y pide a gritos que le ayuden a que se sane y nos dé vida.
Mamita 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 mamita
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Karin and Sontierra, for that powerful reminder of our cultural roots. To open our first conversation, we're driving into a foundational reality many Latinos families know too well. The rising danger of global warming that makes extreme heat and air pollution worse, and especially impacts the most vulnerable amongst us, pregnant women, new mothers, and babies. These climate threats are also compounded by lack of access to care and toxic exposure. To help us understand what's at stake for our families, I'm honored to welcome two incredible leaders. Isabel Gonzalez Whitaker is Associate Vice President of Moms Clean Air Force and Director of EcoMadres. She is recognized nationally for her advocacy, including being named a Parents Magazine Next Gen winner alongside Michelle Obama, and one of People's in Espanol top 20 most powerful Latinos fighting climate change. She will be interviewing Dr. Deborah Hendrickson, who is a world-renowned pediatrician practicing in Reno, the fastest warming city in the US. She is the author of The Air They Breathe, a pediatrician on the front lines of climate change, and teaches pediatrics at the University of Nevada. A sought-after speaker with a background in environmental science, she has been featured in the Los Angeles Times, ABC News, PBS News, and more. We're honored to have her here with us today to share what she's seen firsthand with her patients on the front lines of extreme heat and climate change. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Deborah Hendrickson and Isabel Gonzalez Whitaker.
Thank you. Gracias, everybody. Yeah, it truly is an honor to be here among you all in this critical state, in this critical city, at this critical period of time. It's really important to us at Moms Clean Air Force and EcoMadres to root our education and our awareness and advocacy efforts in science and in accuracy. And so it is really an honor to sit here with Dr. Deborah Hendrickson, who brings years of experience, both as a practitioner in Reno, which, if you all don't know, is the fastest warming city in the United States, 7 degrees over the last 5 decades, compared to the national average of 2 degrees. And 1 degree is severe enough. So imagine 7 degrees compounded over a long period of time, what that's done and what she's seen. But more than that, she also brings, or in addition to that, she also brings an environmental science background. So she's had some aha moments in her career, which she writes about in this incredible book that she wrote. Please take a copy, The Air They Breathe, in which she recounts stories of her own practice, but stories that she also sought out. Families who experienced incredible tragedies because of loss of children to extreme heat, or traumas inflicted because of floods and wildfire smoke. She wrote this book. It was published 2 years ago. I'm sad to say that things have not gotten better. I don't even need to sort of recount the tragedies of this year with the floods in Texas and the wildfires and the continuing extreme heat. So we're going to have a conversation today to level set and to sort of foundationally provide you all with the reasons why we do this work. And that's rooted in the care and the well-being of our community, which is disproportionately impacted, which we'll learn about, and our children, who are the most vulnerable among us. So thank you, Dr. Hendrickson.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to meet you all.
Of course. So you've often said that we are only as healthy as the air we breathe.
Yes.
Let's talk about that a little bit. And you also have a slide that sort of demonstrates that, which I hope that they're able to pull up.
Yeah.
That sort of talks about this very interconnected experience between air, something I think that we all take for granted, except try to hold your breath for more than 2 minutes and see what happens,
Right.
or live as Dr. Hendrickson does in Reno, where you have days and days and days of smoke-filled air. Explain to us that interconnectedness and why we all need to understand.
Yeah. And this is something that really interested me, and one of the main reasons I started the book. And it ties into something that Son Tierra was just saying, which is that we are of the earth. And it's not something we think about very often. We take it for granted, but all of us sitting here breathing are pulling the atmosphere into our lungs. And every time we drink water, that's the atmosphere also that we're pulling into our bodies. And every cell of our body contains water and oxygen. So we literally carry the atmosphere around with us all the time. We're part of the fabric of it. And we just don't think about that very much. And so every day we drive around, we live our lives, and our society is pumping billions of tons of pollutants into that atmosphere. It's just something that if I think we understood the linkages between us and the environment a little better, we wouldn't do. And this is especially important for children. And one of the reasons the book got the title it did was because children's bodies and minds literally form through interaction with the world. And the younger you are, the more important this is. There's an expression in environmental health that the timing makes the poison. And what that means is the younger you are, the more susceptible you are to environmental harm. But we know now, for example, children's lung health depends on air quality. If you are growing up in a very polluted neighborhood, like a lot of low-income kids do, your lungs are likely to be smaller and stiffer when you reach adulthood than a child growing up in clean air. And we know if that air becomes clean, or if the kids can move to a clean air neighborhood, they can regain like 10 to 12% of their lung capacity. So they're very dependent, because they're born with lungs that aren't yet formed. 85% of lung growth happens after you're born. And so they really need that clean air. And one of the most alarming things from the last 10 years we've learned is that clean air is also really important for neurodevelopment, for brain development. There's so much in the news about vaccines and autism, for which there's no link. No link's ever been established, but very few parents know that fossil fuel pollution is being tied more and more to autism rates, to ADHD rates, to learning problems in children. I think there's all these really insidious, subtle effects that people just don't see and don't know about. But this is all tied to the air that children are breathing.
Thank you for illuminating us and grounding us in that knowledge. Now, I don't know if we were able to pull up the slide, but can you mime it?
Yes. So this was a slide I put together to try to explain to people, because I think there's a little bit of confusion. Fossil fuel pollution on its own causes lots of health problems. So even if it were not causing global warming, epidemiologists, people who study, disease and trends in populations, think that millions of people around the world every year are killed by fossil fuel pollution. Now, it's never labeled that that's the cause of their death, right? They're dying of heart attacks, of strokes, of diabetes, of kidney disease. But if you look at people who are exposed versus not exposed, you see big differences in the death rates from these diseases, and dementia too, another major public health problem. So even without climate change, you have these problems from fossil fuels. But fossil fuels are also heating up the planet, and that's causing more air pollution and other health, heat waves and other issues. So it's causing wildfire smoke like we see in my town, increasing ozone, which is urban smog, airborne allergens, and of course, heat waves, more hurricanes, all these other things, which are also a public health problem.
Right. So everything feeds into each other. The
Right.
bottom line is it's bad.
Right.
So in your book, you wrote, no, actually, this is when we interviewed you for Mom's Clean Air Force. You explained an aha moment that you had that was treating a 10-month-old who had come in with some debilitating wheezing and other respiratory issues. And in the distance was the Yosemite Rim fire.
Yes.
And I think this was in 2013. And that was one of the first fires of that magnitude that sort of made people stop and go, whoa, is the apocalypse here? Describe a little bit of that moment. And then I'd like to see if you have a corollary with extreme heat in your practice.
Yeah. That was the first time that I really felt like my past career as an environmental scientist and my current career as a pediatrician came together, because I had learned, in my education that one of the things that was expected from climate change was worsening wildfires. And I was in my clinic, and this little 10-month-old, actually Hispanic baby came in, and she'd had some history of wheezing. It was ash was falling outside the window like snow, and we'd have these gusts of wind where cinders and haze would swirl around the building, and it really was this apocalyptic scene. And her mom brought her in with a damp baby blanket covering the car seat to try to protect her, and there was ash on the baby blanket, and she set it down, and soot just formed a ring around this baby's car seat. And we put her on the table, and I was listening to her lungs, and she was wheezing and struggling to breathe. And she just looked up at me with these big brown eyes, and I was listening to her wheezing. And her mom said to me, "Isn't it funny how you never think about breathing until you can't?" And it was just this like moment, and I thought, wow, I just wanted to write about. I thought I have this background where I could sort of explain, zoom out from that moment and talk about what are the global forces that are going on with what's going outside the window, and then zoom into the microscopic structures of her body to talk about what's happening for this one little girl in a clinic, a little city in the West.
Right, a little city in the West that was essentially ground zero for wildfire pollution. This is not like a superlative any city wants, but I think we discussed that Reno has the sixth worst particle pollution in the country, worse than Los Angeles. And particle pollution, for those that don't know, is soot, essentially. I mean, at the most understandable level. You can see it, you can inhale it, you can smell it, and it's particularly bad on hot weather days. So when did you start seeing cases of extreme heat that became more worrisome to you?
Yeah, so when I first moved to Reno, we have a high desert climate, so it's always been cooler than Las Vegas, and we had huge swings between day and nighttime temperatures, like 40, even sometimes close to 50-degree difference between day and night, and 100-degree days were very, very rare. But now we can see half of July across 100 degrees. And so I started seeing, actually the first case I had was a football player who collapsed. He was at practice. And this is a typical story, by the way. The biggest period for sports-related, heat injuries are right when they start practice in the late summer, early fall, because they're not acclimated yet to the heat. And he collapsed during practice and ended up in the hospital. And so, and that was not something I'd seen in Reno before. And his dad was saying, how did this happen? I mean, we used to play this time of year, and why did this happen? And so, yeah.
And we recently had a similar experience. I live in Memphis, Tennessee, where we lost a young boy who was playing football practice and on an extreme heat day. So this is only happening with more frequency. And I think it's important at this point also for you to explain why little bodies aren't little adult bodies.
Right.
And I think you, in your book, say, there are three core precepts that distinguish a child's body from an adult body that make it so much more susceptible.
Right. Yeah, and there's a long list of reasons if you want to go into the details, but the three main categories are, that their physiology is different, and physiology is the way your body works. So we do say in pediatrics often, children aren't just small adults, and that means you can't just take the same calculations and assumptions you would use for an adult and just, decrease them. Their bodies work differently. An example that is relevant to wildfire smoke is that little kids breathe faster. So they're breathing in more air pollution, than we are. The second big reason that they're different is they're smaller, of course. So that kid who's breathing faster, he also has a lower rate. So it's more air pollution per pound of weight than we're breathing in. And the third reason, which is probably the most important, is that their organs and body systems are still forming and growing, like I was saying in the beginning about lungs and brain. So if you think about like a river going down a ravine, if it hits some obstruction, it's going to go in a different direction. That's kind of what's happening with the lungs and the brain. The lungs are dividing constantly throughout childhood into all these little sacs. But we know now that when kids are exposed to these air pollutants, they don't divide as much. They don't get as many of those sacs, and the muscles in the lungs get stiffer. Same thing with the brain, that it seems like the pathways of brain development are disrupted by inflammation, by physical obstruction of the particles being in the brain.
And you make a great analogy. So if you imagine a young person, a baby, a young child, it's like clay that's being shaped by a potter. And a little movement or a little pressure distorts the outcome of that shape. But as an adult, firm, built out, strong, we have the defenses to deflect or, become a little bit less
Yes.
less susceptible or vulnerable to those influences. And this was really clear to me in an example that you gave also in terms of the vulnerability of children being distinct of the vulnerability of adults, is that you recount a tragic story of a father taking, or an adult figure taking a child on a hike in Arizona,
Yeah.
thinking, okay, it's a short hike. Yes, it's a very hot day. Perhaps we don't have enough water. We'll be fine, essentially. We've all been in situations like that. We've done this before. It'll be fine. Well, that human adult body reacted very differently to the circumstances and the exposure than that child who ultimately succumbed to extreme heat.
Right. Right. And that chapter, I tried to tell stories of two. I told two stories of two boys.
Yes.
And I wanted it to be a metaphor for climate change, actually, because the difference in the outcome between those two boys was the difference in the speed of the response to their circumstances. And I thought that was a good.
Right. One received help
immediately. Yeah.
And survived. With incredible, it was a long road to recovery. You guys have to read this book. It's incredibly powerful. And one succumbed. It's, as a parent, it's a warning, and it makes you realize that there's certainly things we can do in our individual control, but it also reinforces the things that we need to do collectively. And I want to talk a little bit about the vulnerabilities of certain communities over other communities. I was reading that here in Vegas, 34% of the outdoor workforce are Latino. 21% of Latinos across the country are more likely to live in urban heat islands. Talk a little bit about and you sent a great heat map that showed here in Las Vegas the sort of the parallel tracking between heat-related deaths that were endemic to the Latino communities where there was more heat and less tree canopy. How are you seeing these systemic injustices played out in your practice? And this is a very large question. What can we do about it?
Right. Yeah, so a similar study was just done in Reno. They did a mapping project last year, and it showed more than a 20-degree difference in the late afternoon between some of the low-income neighborhoods of Reno and some of the better-off neighborhoods. So there, I haven't talked about when wildfire smoke descends on a city, the effect is equal on everybody, but the susceptibility, the vulnerabilities of the families, and their ability to respond to it by buying air filters, things like that, is different. But heat really it descends on the whole city, but it really has different effects in different neighborhoods. We know that low-income neighborhoods tend to be hotter. They tend to have more air pollution. And as the heat rises, that air pollution gets worse because you get more smog, and usually fires follow right away. And so in study after study has shown that low-income families, Latino families, people of color are more susceptible to heat illness, to the effects of air pollution, to many of these health consequences that we're talking about. Yeah.
This became starkly clear to me personally this past year. My son developed asthma. As I mentioned, we live in Memphis, Tennessee, and he is generally pretty susceptible to pollen allergies. And this year was no exception. What was exceptional was the pollution in the air, which compounded to make the situation much worse, which I'm convinced was generated by an AI data center about 5 miles from our house. This is the statistic that really scared me when I landed in the emergency room no less than 5 times with him, that Latinos are 40% more likely to die of asthma than the general population.
Yes. Yeah, and I should have mentioned too, outdoor workers, that Latinos are 3 times, they represent about 1/3 of outdoor worker deaths from heat. Farm workers are the top job for heat deaths. And low-income people, people in low-income jobs are 5 times more likely to suffer a heat injury than other groups. So, yeah.
And that's even more frightening because I was, in doing the research for this, reading also that the American Lung Association identified like the 5 worst cities for air pollution and particle pollution, but also I think also ozone in the United States this year. 3 of them are Latino dominant cities, all in California: Bakersfield, Fresno,
Right.
and
LA. Yeah.
Ergo, why these conversations today are so important and why it's so important to sign our petitions and to take action. Let's talk a little bit about long-term effects and also maternal health. So we know that there's that triage moment when the child has asthma, when the smoke is in the air, when there's wheezing, but you reveal an entire, wealth of data and research that's being coming to the surface about what happens in the long run, whether you've been exposed once or you've been exposed multiple times. And then, of course, the transmission of pollution through the placenta. I laugh because I'd cry.
Yeah. So, and pregnancy is a period of increased susceptibility to all these environmental effects as well. Both the mom and the fetus are vulnerable. The mom's vulnerable to heat because, and I should mention, one of the issues with heat is, we generate heat all the time. It's metabolic heat. All of us are doing it right now. And we maintain a normal temperature in our bodies because the heart pumps blood to the skin, and that heat is vented to the outside world. But when the outside world gets hotter, that gets harder. And so you get heated both by your own body and by the temperature outside. So for pregnant moms, they generate more of that metabolic heat. Their metabolism is all revved up, and they've got the baby's heat. And they have a harder time cooling off because they have more insulation. They need more fluid, so they're more likely to get dehydrated. So we see all kinds of, unfortunately, because this is supposed to be a joyous time of life, but you see more illness from heat and more death from heat in pregnant moms. So they have to be very, very careful, and all kinds of life-threatening complications like hypertension, heart attacks, strokes, gestational diabetes, placental abruption, which is when the placenta, separates from the uterus too early. So all these things look like they're increased by heat. So they're especially at risk. With the fetus, the data is really concerning and upsetting because heat exposure is being in utero at certain stages of development is being tied to all kinds of later problems you might not predict. One of the big ones is, prematurity and low birth weight. And air pollution like smoke does the same thing. We know it's tied to premature birth and low birth weight. If you're born premature and small, you then have lifelong, greater odds of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, many other problems. But other strange things like spina bifida has been associated with heat exposure in the first trimester, and that's where the spine doesn't form normally. Leukemia was recently tied to exposure, childhood leukemia. So the body, we just evolved in a certain set of circumstances that are changing. And so we're seeing all kinds of things, unfortunately, long-term that are not good.
All the more reason to get angry. Okay, let's talk about getting angry, actually, and let's talk about solutions. So you wrote this book about 2 years ago, and things were different.
Yes.
There was hope a little bit on the horizon with investments in renewables, solar power, wind power. We are at a different time right now. We're back to drill, baby, drill. We're back to coal, which contributes both to ozone and to particle pollution. All these things we're talking about. We are currently mobilizing around wanting to protect the endangerment finding, which is the foundational basis for the Clean Air Act. How worried are you? You painted a picture at the end of your book where you took one of your patients and you sort of projected what life would be like 10 years from now for her, 30 years from now for her. And it wasn't without challenges, but in a cooling environment, it was a much more hopeful, beautiful picture than the one that I feel like we're facing now.
Right. And I think it is important to keep that vision in mind because it can be so, you can get so despairing about the way things are. And I think this battle has to be not just about avoiding that terrible future, but moving toward that better future that we want for them, sustainable cities, clean air, and all that. Yeah, things have changed a lot, and I added an afterword to the paperback because of that, to talk about that. I think there are still good signs. They aren't coming so much from the United States, but even here, solar continues to expand. I think in the end, maybe it was always going to be this way, but it's coming down to money. That solar is so cheap now, and battery storage is, the prices just keep plummeting and plummeting. And you cannot install any facility faster than solar and a battery. And so all around the world, like Pakistan, I think they had a jump of like a third of their electricity now is all of a sudden powered by just people who went out and bought solar panels and for their homes. This is happening all over China. Their rate of solar expansion is just astounding. So they're probably going to be the first electro state, that is powered completely by renewable energy. So we are definitely the dinosaurs here and using dinosaur fuel and being very backward. But I think there are reasons to have hope. The problem is, the speed of the transition. I think there's no doubt that this transition will happen, but it's all about the speed, because we have to cut carbon emissions in half this decade to have any hope of keeping the trend line of warming below that 1.5 degrees. And a lot of people think that's probably not possible anymore. But even if it's 1.6, that's better than 1.7. We have to do all we can. But I think, just to get back to the basis of your question, I think it's really important to think about what the Trump administration is doing is a crime against children. This is a crime against the next generation. And they're doing multiple things that are crimes against children, the environment just being one of them. And it's okay to be angry about that, with things that are happening in the news. I don't want anybody to be violently angry. I'm not saying that. But constructive anger is a really important emotion for overcoming despair. If your kid is being bullied or hurt or is injured, you feel angry and upset and you fight for your child. And that's what I'm saying.
Right. And you do. And I know we're keeping an eye on time, but I do think it's an important point that you point out, that the hope that you draw often is from the parents who are getting the worst prognoses.
Yes.
That sort of collapse in that moment, but that stand back up, learn about the issues, learn how to fight for their children. So, as we collectively ask people to, for example, sign our petitions, or any petition, we'll take any, to support the protection of the endangerment finding, which unequivocally prove that greenhouse gases cause climate change, which is causing the extreme weather and the extreme heat, which is causing the health problems. This is a salve in despair, and we can't sit in despair, because that doesn't help anybody.
Exactly. Tap into that fierce protectiveness we all feel for our kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Last note. I loved this. You wrote this recently in Wired magazine. Parents, you hope the parents come to see that solar panels, heat pumps, home insulation as this generation's equivalent of the polio vaccine. Something that demands that we protect their children. I found that sort of revolutionary, to think about the actions that we can take, which is what we are proponents of, as a shot in the arm.
Mm-hmm.
What's the action that we can take today? What's the shot in the arm?
I think there's many, but what I usually tell people is think of your child and your family as being at the center of a series of spheres. And the first sphere is just your home, maybe your car and your family. And then the next sphere out is your job, your school, your neighborhood, your city. And just take an inventory of the ways in which how you could adapt to what's going on and how you could prevent things from getting worse, and pick one action and just take that action. Now, one good one in Las Vegas is tree cover. There are a couple of programs both in Las Vegas and Clark County to give trees to families, because one of the main reasons neighborhoods are different temperatures is because of a lack of tree cover. But you can go to one of these programs, they'll bring trees to you, or you can go pick them up, and plant them in your neighborhood. It improves the temperature, improves air quality, improves people's mood. That's a really simple, small thing. And the other one I would mention is working with your kids' school to try to decarbonize schools. And that gets the kids involved too. Both of these would. Start small, just keep building on it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hendrickson.
Thank you all. Yeah, thank you.
We're going to take a quick picture. Okay. I'm stepping into, can you guys hear me? Okay, so hopefully now we're a bit rooted in the why. And I'm stepping into Mary's role because I'm introducing Mary. Okay, can you guys hear me? Okay, there we go. Oh, this mic. Okay, there we go. Okay, let me find my words. Here we go. I'm introducing scorched and overcharged. We are going to be turning to the critical issue at the intersection of climate and equity, which is happening in Nevada, as well as across the country. This panel will explore how extreme heat and rising energy costs create serious health, financial, and housing challenges right here in our communities. Guiding this conversation is Janelle Calderon, reporter with the Nevada and El Nevada Ese, whose work covers stories at the heart of Nevada's Latino communities. Dr. Joanna Leovi, a family physician with more than 30 years of primary care experience, including 8 here in Vegas, as a community health clinic at a community health clinic treating patients disproportionately exposed to heat and pollution. And she's chair of Nevada's Clinicians for Climate Action, where she works in coalition to educate and for measures to reduce climate change impacts on health. Assembly Member Howard Watts, wonderful. Thank you so much, sir, for being here. Representing District 15, is a legislative leader on sustainability, conservation, consumer protection, social equity, and government modernization. As a Las Vegas native and University of Las Vegas graduate, he has long championed policies to build healthier, more resilient communities. And Mary Wagner, someone I adore, superstar, a passionate advocate and mother of 2 who began her journey when her son's asthma revealed the toll of pollution and climate change. As the Nevada field organizer for Moms Clean Air Force and EcoMadres, she mobilizes thousands of families across Nevada to raise awareness and push for clean energy solutions that safeguard children's health and our shared future. Please join me in welcoming them.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you guys all for joining us. I will be asking a series of questions to directly one of our speakers, but if any of you guys want to jump in and add to the conversation, I mean, that's what we're here for, right? So let's start with Dr. Levy. We just heard a little bit from Dr. Hendrickson about the impact of growing up, with bad air quality. So, Dr. Levy, from your perspective as a physician working closely with immigrant and low-income families, what health challenges are you seeing as extreme heat intensifies, and especially for those with limited access to care?
I think that's such a great question, and it's wonderful to be here. I think Dr. Hendrickson and Isabel in the last session expressed so much about how both air pollution and extreme heat affect health. And I think despite that, there's still a real lack of knowledge among most of us health professionals and most of the members of the public about what happens. For example, with extreme heat, it's easy for us to focus on the severe outcomes like heat stroke and death, and the fact that last year in 2024, over 500 people died as a result of extreme heat. But it's a lot harder for us to keep in mind all the simple things that happen. So we know that the biggest cause of death and illness related to heat isn't actually heat stroke. It's cardiovascular problems like heart attacks. Regular exposure to heat, which is a big problem among outdoor workers, for example, leads to a lot of kidney disease. And I think most people with chronic kidney disease don't understand that heat can be a part of that. Heat has serious mental health problems. Many of us have experienced not being able to sleep when it's really hot. It disrupts sleep. It also seems to increase anger and possibly interpersonal violence and depression. And it certainly makes learning harder for children. So these simple, common problems, I just saw all the time in the population I care for in the Heat Island area, Vegas. And I think the other problem is that Latino communities and low-income communities here and elsewhere around the country, the same communities that are suffering a lot also have more difficulty accessing regular health care, having a regular provider of chronic care. And so there's an overlap between access to health and the experience related to health problems with heat.
Yeah, and Mary, your child has asthma, right, as we heard. Have you heard similar things from other moms through EcoMadres about, their impact or, the health of their children and the impact of climate?
Yeah, absolutely. I get to work with community members who are mothers in the community and whose children also have respiratory issues. And not only do they have to worry about the health of their children, but they're also struggling to pay their bills because when we have extreme heat, now we're paying higher energy bills and then we add on top of that the medical bills. And so that's something that we see on a daily basis, especially here in Las Vegas, which is one of the second most fastest warming city in the country. It's something that mothers or parents are dealing with here in our state. Absolutely.
Yeah, can you touch more about the challenges of utility costs?
Yeah, so I think that we know that inflation is crazy nowadays. The cost of living has skyrocketed. But one of the things that we have been impacted as a community is these rising cost of bills that we're seeing. And unfortunately, having our AC on during the summertime is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And we see community members that sometimes struggle and they have to make the decision of whether to pay their utility bills or put food on the table or pay for medication. And last year, like Dr. Loewe mentioned, we had over 500 Nevadans that passed away due to extreme heat. And we have people that have to make the hard decision of turning off their AC in times that they think that it's safe to do so. But unfortunately, because extreme heat is only worsening every year, it's not really an option that we should even be thinking about. So that's something that we do see a lot in our community members.
Did anybody else want to add to that? Okay.
Sure, I'll add a little bit. Please bear with my voice. I'm just getting over a cold. So, I was born and raised in Las Vegas. I actually had childhood asthma myself. So I can definitely relate to some of these issues. And I think, the bottom line is you can't be healthy if you're hot, right? That's what I think the overall message is. And in this community, that means running air conditioning, and that takes electricity, right? And I think, the issue with utility bills is we often kind of view that as separately, but it's a fundamental necessity for housing, right? And so when you live in older housing that hasn't been maintained as much, your electricity bills are higher, period. And what that is a hidden tax or fee. So even though the rent's lower, right? If your electricity bill is higher, that's a necessity, right? And it's like your rent is increased every single month for you being able to provide that basic necessity. And the only other thing too is that the same way, if you get behind on your rent, you can be evicted. You get behind on your electricity bills, and you can have your electricity shut off. And that can be, and it can be shut off in the summer, and that can be truly dangerous and life-threatening.
Yeah, on that topic, I mean, we have seen, proposed rate hikes on electricity for families, like you mentioned, that are already under a financial strain. What have you heard from your constituents about the costs and how it's affecting their lives?
Yeah, I mean, the rising cost of utilities, along with many other things, like you said, inflation across so many things, food, the cost of transportation. We're seeing the cost of necessities rise everywhere. But again, electricity is one of those most fundamental things, right? Right after you get the roof over your head, you need electricity. And the costs, the rising costs have been a concern for so many people. We saw a couple of years ago, all of our utility bills went through the roof, and that was because the cost of natural gas, right, went through the roof. And more than half of our electricity is generated with that fossil fuel. So when that price goes up, all of our bills go up, and anyone's gas bills also went up, right? So what is the solution? Local clean energy, right? That has a stable fuel cost, and that fuel cost is zero, right? It's using the sunshine that we've got beating down on us pretty much every day and using it to power us. I'm very fortunate. I've been able to put solar on my house and see my electricity bills drop. But we know that that's something that has not always been accessible to everybody, right? There's financial barriers to access that. If you don't own your property, there are barriers to access that. And so that's one of the things that I've worked on in the legislature, is trying to advance policies that break down those barriers and make sure that this wonderful technology that we have to use our natural resources and lower that economic burden are available to everybody, and really available to the people who need it most.
Did you want to add something, Dr.?
I just think that's so true. There's an author, Jeff Goodell, who's written a lot about heat, and he wrote last month about the new American inequality, those who are cooled and those who are cooked, as he put it. And, as a person with a lot of income, we were also able to put on solar, do lots of weatherization in our home, have heat pumps and electric cars. And as a result, in my household, we barely pay anything for our utility costs. It's very, very cheap. So there's no reason that we need to accept that kind of inequality where higher income people actually can lower their bills and low income people are suffering with heat. This is a changeable thing, and I'm so glad that Assemblyman Watts has worked on it.
Awesome. Back to Mary. As a mom raising children in Nevada's, extreme summers, how do you personally navigate keeping your home safe and cool? And how do you prepare your children, to go out? Because I remember in the summers, being inside all day is also not very healthy for your mental health, right? So going out, maybe parks are too hot. How do you navigate that?
It's really hard in the summertime, especially because my oldest is asthmatic. So whenever the temperatures do rise, that's when we're seeing that he's having a little bit more issue in breathing. He struggles. So keeping him indoors is one of the safest options, but it's also not good for mental health. Like you said, they're always inside, they're in electronics instead of being able to enjoy nature. And so it makes it very difficult, especially because we do live in what is known here in Las Vegas as a urban heat island. And so it's a lot hotter than other parts of town. We live in an area where there's not much greenery space. We don't have much cooling spaces for the community members. And so it does become very difficult. Even for my dog, he has to stay indoors. It's too hot for him to be outside. I love plants. We moved in the home that we're in now. My mother gifted me several plants, and unfortunately, not one of them was able to make it through. And so seeing that, it's very heartbreaking because when we were younger, we got to play outside. And I lived in California, so playing outside, being outdoors, being able to see your neighbors, your friends was really nice. But unfortunately, that's something that a lot of our children here in the state of Nevada, here in Las Vegas, they don't get to experience that. They have to be indoors instead of being outdoors playing like children.
do you think, not that they understand that, but do you have those conversations with them? Like they could get sick or,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, my oldest experiences firsthand. In the summertime is usually when he has to use his inhaler more, or when we have to use his nebulizer. And so we always have to carry that and have it in handy. And even when we travel, it has to be with us. And unfortunately, it's a conversation that I have to have with them. And it's something that, being in the space, they are very well educated in the topic, and it's cute, but it's also very sad to see them have those conversations with their friends at such a young age.
Yeah, and Dr. Levy, like you mentioned, we see so many heat-related deaths every year. Access to cooling and clean air can be life-saving, but protections don't often reach the people most at risk, like we talked about. From your work, what other systemic barriers do you see that prevent vulnerable people from having these protections?
Yeah, I think there's a message of hope here, because every heat death is preventable, actually. And what we need is a lot of focus on community resilience and resilient homes. And I see that as being very possible. I think one of the issues that I've seen here in Las Vegas is we really, as a community, have only started talking about extreme heat in the last 2 or 3 years. People are grappling with what are the best solutions? What are the most cost-effective solutions? How can we make investments now that will actually save us money, both on utility bills and health costs later? So I think it's just a big hurdle to climb. There are a lot of possible things to consider. And so the barriers are lack of imagination and lack of like long-term thinking about investments. But in terms of people's individual experiences and patients I treated, I think there is an overlap between having difficulty cooling your home, having a job that gives you either indoor or outdoor heat exposure, having barriers to transportation where you have to be outside walking or cycling or taking the bus. And as a community, I think, and as a state, it's good for us to address all those issues to help people be cooler.
And one thing I'd just like to kind of add on to that, there are some other communities. Phoenix is another extremely hot community, and they were a little bit further ahead in terms of anchoring heat as something that they needed to plan for comprehensively and think about holistically, and how they create a community that is more resilient in the face of extreme heat. It took us 2 legislative sessions to get it done, but we actually passed a bill to integrate that into the planning for our local governments, both here in the Las Vegas area as well as up in the Reno area, so that we're not just thinking about this from the worker perspective or the transportation perspective, that we're trying to think about it holistically, right? And move beyond, which was a great step and start at its point in time, which was when the temperature reaches a certain point, we'll put out cooling centers, right, throughout the community, so that if people can't stay cool at home, they can get there. But we need to think much more broadly about it, right? And as we've looked at putting in more trees and doing other things, how do we build cooler cities and communities? I'm hopeful that integrating that into how our cities and counties do planning, so that they think about it across the board and not in these kind of little silos, will make a meaningful difference for our community.
Mary, did you want to add your thoughts to that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to thank Assemblyman Watts for the work that he's doing in the legislature. I think that many of us community members and leaders were able to participate and support and be able to go up to Carson or even here and speak about the issues that we're facing. And it's really nice to have leaders that are willing to work with the community and to ensure that they are working on legislation that's going to address these issues that are impacting our community. Because it impacts us in so many levels, not just health, but also our pockets. And so it's nice to know that we do have those leaders that are listening to us, and we also have community members that are willing to get involved, because it also takes us being able to get out of our comfort zone and ensure that we are supporting the leaders that are backing us up, that are decision makers.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about solutions later on today. But yeah, I want to talk to you guys about your advocacy for clean energy and utility justice, and how you are informing and helping our community become more empowered in that sector. Whoever wants to start.
I guess I'll start. So during this last legislative session, I introduced a bill, Assembly Bill 458, to enable solar to be deployed on our affordable housing across the state of Nevada. So thank you. Yeah, it's great. And I think for many of us, it sounds common sense, but we had systems in place that wouldn't allow that. Again, renting versus owning is a huge barrier, right, for being able to deploy solar. And in apartments, it is very complicated. I'm not going to get into all of the kind of technical details, but it's very difficult to figure out how can you put solar on the roofs of those apartment buildings, on the parking structures, and then how do you get that to each tenant that's in that apartment? And so what we did was create a system that allows that to happen. And there have been some of those systems set up in other communities that we look to, try to take the best practices from all of those and incorporate them here. There were some programs that were set up that were utility operated, but they had limits on them. Also, whenever the utility is making investments, those are things that all of us pay for. So we wanted to figure out how we could get everybody involved, right? And there are affordable housing developers, right? Some of those are our local governments, and they're nonprofits and others, and they want to make those investments into their communities. They understand that those utility costs are such a barrier and a hardship for the residents there, but they didn't have a legal system set up to do it. So we were able to get that bill passed through the legislature with bipartisan support. So as we're looking for solutions, we're looking for hope. That's an example of something that we were able to do. It was not easy. It took a lot of time and hearing different concerns and trying to work on that policy, but ultimately we were able to get it across the finish line. So hopefully soon, when you look at apartment buildings and other affordable housing throughout our community, you're going to start to see solar panels going up on those, and know that folks that previously didn't have access to lower their bills through solar energy are now going to be able to see those benefits and are going to be able to take those dollars and use them on other necessities and making ends meet.
Anybody else want to answer the question?
As a community member, I think that I always use my story, and I remind folks that everything kind of interconnects. So when people are complaining about how hot it is, we want to talk about why it's getting hotter, why it's getting warmer every year. When people are talking about their utility bills, we also want to talk about solutions to ensure that we know that even though it is a very sad conversation to have and it can be very uncomfortable, there is things that we can do together as community members. And so part of my job is to get community members involved and to help them raise their voice, as well as educate, organize, and mobilize the community to ensure that we're all getting involved, that we're holding utility companies accountable, that we're holding elected officials accountable, that we're working together as a community to ensure that we're moving forward with solutions. And I always tell people, I know that it's very hard, it's very uncomfortable, but small little changes that we can make in our daily lives, like using less single-use plastics is one of those. And it's hard at the beginning because we're so used to our fast life. But once you think about the results at the end and how you're helping your children and future generations, you understand how important each and every one of us play a role in ensuring that we're mitigating for our future, to ensure that we're building building a more sustainable future for our children and future generations. So I love what I do. I love being able to talk to community members. And I know that a lot of times, you know, people, we don't think about how everything interconnects. Like we mentioned earlier, housing is one of those things, but starting to kind of connect the dots and put them together and ensuring that these conversations are being had every day, because everything kind of interconnects, I think has been a really important part of my job.
I really like that you mentioned how hard this is, because as a doctor, it's really easy to think I need to stay in my lane. I have a job, I'm treating patients. And yet, once you realize that climate change is the biggest threat to human health that we have for all kinds of reasons, heat and air quality, but also disasters and infectious diseases and food and water quality, once you see that, you can't really ignore it. And I think for a lot of people, we think, this isn't my main thing. I don't know enough. I'm not sure what to do. And it's hard to get started. And I came to realize after a while, I don't have to know everything. I can learn as I go. And being in a community of people that helps to be supportive and sharing ideas, I think is really important. And that's why I think it's so great that we're having this session today.
Yeah, I'm curious what you guys tell people that maybe shrug it off or don't think that, you know, this extreme heat is extreme, or like maybe that they're getting sick, but oh no, it can't be climate, or no, the sky is blue, it doesn't look that bad. What do you tell people, especially Dr. Levy?
I think my experience, you know, we always worry about those people who don't want to believe anything, but a much larger proportion of people just have not had the opportunity for a conversation. So for example, we can educate patients in the office. One of the issues with heat is that there are a number of medications that people take on a chronic daily basis that make them much more susceptible to heat illness. And people don't necessarily know that. So that's an example of how we can educate people. It doesn't always have to be politicized. So I think I try not to worry about climate deniers. I think there's a much larger proportion of people that just are worried and don't know what to do or don't think that they know enough. And those are wonderful people to work with.
And I think from my perspective, it's also, you can meet people where they're at, which, you know, we've been talking about before. It's pocketbook issues, right? So, and people do, they feel this. And so let's, you know, if people feel skepticism about how much humans are influencing climate change, or the, you know, the big picture of like how we would have to change things to get to zero emissions, let's put that conversation to the side. During the time that I have grown up in this community, I have personally seen the change in our summers. I have seen, and yeah, sometimes it's cooler and wetter, and sometimes it's hotter. But right, last year we had the hottest day ever in Las Vegas, right? And we used to have all these wonderful summer thunderstorms. They're pretty much gone, right? And so I've seen it just within my lifetime, the changes in our community. So that's something that you can talk about. And then when we talk about solutions, it's about saving money. And it's about, again, we don't produce coal. We don't produce gas. We don't produce oil here. But what we have are those clean, renewable resources. We've got tons of sunshine. We have geothermal energy in parts of the state. All of these things that we can use that are right here. And by developing those things, we create jobs. We put people to work, right? That's economic opportunity for folks. And then by using those things that are right here and getting away from some of these other things that are not only bad for us, but they have costs, right? Then that is helping us save money, right? When you put on solar panels, we're helping people save money and lower their bills. And so when you start looking at those economic pocketbook issues, we don't have to engage in that in the area where there might be some disagreement and debate. And that's where we can find ways to get a lot of people on board.
I think for me is reminding people that we can take action. There's little things that we can do. At Moms Clean Air Force right now, we have an action where you can go on our website and you can sign a petition to ensure that we're asking policymakers to slow down the production of plastic pollution. You can also slow down on using single-use plastics, little things that we can do together as community to ensure that we're all doing our part. This is an issue that we're not going to fix from one day to another. It's not going to take one decision maker to change it. It's going to take every single one of us. So ensuring that when we're having these conversations and people complain about the heat or they complain about their bills, we're also talking about those solutions and what we can do together as a community to ensure that we are doing our part.
Awesome. And with that, we wrap up this conversation. So thank you so much to our panel, Dr. Levy, Assemblymember Watts, and Mary Wagner. And I'm Janelle Calderon. I'm the newsletter editor with the Nevadan El Nevadense.
As we've heard, extreme heat is just one piece of a much larger puzzle when it comes to health impacts. Many of the same communities facing these health risks are also battling the dangerous impacts of plastic and petrochemicals pollution, compounding threats that affect our air and water and also the health of our families. To help us explore the interconnect crisis further, please join me in welcoming my colleague Amanda Rawolds, Ohio field organizer for Moms Clean Air Force and a public policy expert with a passion for building common grounds to solve tough problems. She's the founder of Work Family Balance, a nonprofit supporting working parents and children development. As a mom, Amanda saw firsthand how plastic pollution impacts daily life negatively, and now works to empower families to fight for cleaner, healthier communities. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Mary. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Amanda Rowalt, formerly a Rios. I'm an Ohio field organizer for Moms Clean Air Force, proud Mexican-American mother of 2 boys, ages 8 and 11. But I'm also a breast cancer survivor. I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 39 when my youngest son was just 4 years old and a year before it was recommended for me to get a mammogram. So I had a team of doctors that did lots of genetic testing. I had nobody else, no other women in my family had breast cancer, so I was not genetically predisposed. So something else caused my cancer. I believe what caused my cancer, much like other people's cancer, is exposure in my everyday life to petrochemicals and plastics. The water I drink, the food we eat, and the air we breathe. And the common thread between all of those is petrochemicals. So as a breast cancer survivor, I'm super passionate about public health advocacy and raising awareness, talking to my community members and communities throughout Ohio, raising awareness about the risks of plastic and all the ways in which it harms our bodies. But as a mother, I'm also, I'm also interested in raising awareness about the connection between petrochemicals and climate change. So including extreme heat and flash floods. So every step of the plastic supply chain emits climate warming gases. And also the plastic industry, its emissions are the world's fastest growing source of industrial climate warming gases. So again, I want you guys to hear that because that's super important. This is worldwide, the fastest growing industrial source of climate warming gases is coming from the petrochemical industry. And these climate change related extreme heat and flash flooding in estates across the country are putting our children at risk. And as mothers, we must be the force that guides us all toward a safer path, a future that is less reliant on plastic and a future that is much healthier and happier because of our choices today. So unfortunately though, the petrochemical company has its own vision for the future. Their vision includes increasing production for plastic for decades to come. And this has little or no regard for the health impact on families, especially our most vulnerable children and pregnant mothers. So the petrochemical industry has created a self-serving solution to address the plastic crisis. They call it advanced recycling. It is neither advanced nor recycling. And this process creates a highly contaminated oil, hazardous waste in the form of like toxic ash, and then also very hazardous air emissions as well. So this is the petrochemical industry's solution, but it is not a solution. It's a false solution for the reasons I've outlined. So their plan is to build this out throughout the country. And as of right now, there's 9 advanced recycling facilities in the country, and 3 of them are in my home state where I live with my family in Ohio. So I have a story where I visited one of the facilities, which is about 40 miles away from where I live. And on that day, coincidentally, I could see plumes of black smoke as I was driving up. You know, I took some video footage and I got close enough where I actually felt physical symptoms. I immediately got dizzy, I had a stinging headache, and I got very nauseous. So I was able to capture a video, which I shared with a local representative, and we were able to meet with the Ohio EPA, and ultimately they found that the facility was had over exceeded on their particulate limit. So the facility is now shut down. So that is some hope. Yeah, I'm very happy for that community. It's in a paused commission status. So, you know, in this facility, you know, I was able to drive away and, you know, go to my home, which was 40 miles away, but this was a whole community that lives with this. And this is a low income community, a working class community. And this is not new. The petrochemical industry targets these communities specifically to produce their toxic products. So in the end, in conclusion, you know, the advanced recycling solution is not a real solution to our very real plastic crisis. As Mary was saying, we can all do more just to make better choices when we shop, and to reject this notion that we can recycle our way out of this problem. And also, what is more impactful is parent advocacy. So scanning the QR code and signing our petitions, this has a great impact and lets Congress know that we want a change of direction in this country and that we're going to hold them accountable. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for those powerful and eye-opening words. We're now going to take a short break and reconvene promptly at 10:35. But before we do, please enjoy another performance by Son Tierra.
Cuando mi bus pasó por ese barrio, no se le oía porque no tenía motor. No hizo ruido ni fue camino al azar, porque era eléctrico y no consumía gas. Cuando mi bus pasó por este barrio, no se le oía porque no tenía motor. No hizo ruido ni contaminó al andar, porque era eléctrico y no consumía gas. Qué bueno que ya pueda respirar sin inhalar el diésel que tira. La buseta siempre a transitar y de llevar a los niños a estudiar. There goes the bus, again I didn't hear it. What will my teacher say when I am late for school? Again, it just sneaks up on me. Now I can breathe, cause it's electric and it doesn't spew out soot. There goes the bus, again I didn't hear it. What will my teacher say when I am late for school? Again, it just sneaks up on me. At least now I can breathe, cause it's electric and it doesn't spew out soot. I am so glad I'm breathing better air and not inhaling diesel fumes and gas. Think every time that bus came rolling by, leaving those giant clouds of dirt behind. Sin inhalar partículas de hielo que le tiraba el auto al colectivo, aquella micro, la buseta y el camión.
El autobús pasó y nadie le escuchó.
Se fue la guagua y ni la percibí. El camión ya partió y no lo escuché. La micro hizo yo y la buseta se fue. El colectivo viene, el autobús se va, la gente se detiene y los mira pasar. El autobús se fue y nadie lo escuchó. Se fue la guagua y no la percibí. El camión ya partió y no lo escuché. La micro ni se oyó, la buseta se fue. Muchas gracias. It's okay to talk while we play. The song I wrote for Congress. Corrido al Congreso, written in the Mexican corrido style. And that song we just performed, I wrote for electric school buses. Exacto. Vamos. Este corrido queremos cantarles a a todos aquellos que nos representan. Dear members of Congress, we sing for our future. We hope you will listen, our words they ring true. This song's for you. Somos la raza, latinos, hispanos, luchamos, cantamos, este es nuestro hogar. We bring to this land the best we can give. In Spanish or English, we work and we sing. This song's for you. Por nuestro futuro y por nuestros hijos queremos buen aire y una tierra sana. We're ready to fight. Let's fight for our future. Our children are watching. The climate is screaming, and we sing to you. This song's for you. Los del Congreso podemos lograrlo con este corrido y poniéndole ganas. The will of your people for better conditions and for better jobs, the future can shine. This song's for you. Por nuestro futuro, por nuestros hijos, queremos buen aire y una tierra sana. We're ready to fight. Let's fight for our future. Our children are watching. The climate is screaming, and we sing to you. Dear members of Congress, we sing for you. Pues hagamos legado porque no nos da tiempo de hacer EcoMadres y EcoPadres, ¿ok? ¿Listo? Legado, rapidito. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Camino de tu mano, aún dependo de tu actuar. El futuro de este mundo aún lo puedes rescatar. Lucha por mí,
lucharé por ti,
y vota por los niños,
y todos los días.
Algún día recordaré que por mí lograste
este mundo.
Lucha por mí,
lucharé por ti,
y vota por los niños,
y todos los días.
Algún día recordaré que por mí lograste
este mundo.
I'm still young and need your hand while I grow and take a stand. Will you help protect our planet? Will you help protect this land? I still have you at my side. But one day you'll say goodbye. I'll inherit what you left me. May your legacy bring life. Please fight for me.
I will fight for you.
And fall for all who fall.
And for all the children.
Today I hope to speak
And
of
for
you.
your
Not just
future.
wisdom for tomorrow.
May it bring you health.
Lucha por mí.
Lucharé por ti.
Y vota por los niños.
Y todos los
Algún día recordaré lo que por mí lograste hacer.
Tu legado me acompañará para poder seguir.
Welcome back, everyone. Wasn't that beautiful? I love listening to them. So up next, we're excited to bring you Climate Chisme. Conversation created by Isaiah Hernandez is all about how storytelling can be a tool for healing, advocacy, and shifting the culture of climate action. Latinos have always been storytellers, and today's panel uplifts that tradition by centering our voices in this movement. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Isaiah Hernandez, environmentalist, educator, and creative committed to making environmental education accessible and intersectional. He will be joined by an incredible panel. Pam Covarrubia, life and business coach, certified clinical EFT practitioner, podcast host of Café con Pam, where she interviews leading voices in Latina leadership and fierce advocates for first-generation women and femmes. Through her work, she inspires people to reclaim their narrative and use storytelling as a tool for resilience and change. Dr. Sylvia Gonzalez is a research and director of the Environmental Justice Portfolio at the Latino Policy and Politics Institute. She focuses on advancing Latino health and climate equity, bringing research to action through policy and advocacy. And last but not least, Flor Diaz Inturralde, a student at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and youth organizer advocating for immigrant rights, climate action, and civic engagement. Together, they'll explore how personal narratives can spark change and inspire collective action. Please give them a warm welcome.
Well, thank you so much again, everyone, for being here today. And thank you to the wonderful panelists that are on here. I love that we're all wearing glasses today on this panel. We're rocking it. Hoy vamos a chismear, but we're going to talk about the good chisme, not the bad chisme. My name is Isaiah Hernandez. I am a queer Latino environmentalist, and I am a former environmental scientist. A lot of my work really focuses on producing environmental media and science and communication. And a lot of my experiences to learn about the environment and to become an environmentalist is growing up in poverty my entire life and recognizing the injustices that existed from not just environmental pollution, but from social injustices and racial injustices. And so for me, creating Climate Chisme was a form to not just reclaim spaces for myself, but to also showcase to other Latinos that, how do we find different ways to talk about climate change and environmental disasters, and to really just acknowledge like everything that is happening in our world today from the recent ICE raids to everything. Like these are all interconnected issues. They're not separate. We cannot separate them from who we are. And when you rip people away from their environments, you are also destroying the environment because we are the environment. And so a lot of us here for this discussion is to talk about our stories and to bring that out. So I am super excited to introduce our panelists. And why don't we actually just start a bit about introducing yourselves? And this is probably the icebreaker question is like, when was the first time that you realized that chisme was more than just gossip in your life? I'd love to hear maybe first from Flor.
So nice to meet you guys. I am Flor Diaz. I'm a UNLV student, but also have experience in organizing youth. I'm very excited to be here, but regarding the question, I think that I've seen chisme be more of a storytelling form, educating, speaking, especially when it comes to youth. I think that's one of the most important things that we need to be doing is storytelling to each other, educating each other. So I've seen how fast news spread throughout my community. And that's where I have seen chisme be more than just gossiping. It's been a form of being in community.
Welcome to the Chisme. My name is Sylvia Gonzalez. I'm co-director of research at the Latino Policy and Politics Institute. We're the largest Latina-led research institute at a university like UCLA, yes. And I have the privilege of being able to use data to tell the stories of our communities and work with our communities to tell those stories. But to your question, what was the first time I thought about chisme? I was thinking about the walk when my mom used to take me to school when I was a kid. She didn't drive, she still doesn't drive. And that half-a-mile walk took about 60 minutes because she would stop, and you all know the story, she would stop and talk to all the comadres along the way. And so I hated it as a child, but in hindsight, now that I think about it, it was her way of getting the resources that she needed to be able to give a good life to her kids, right? It was a way that she was able to arrange for arraite when it was too hot or when she knew it was going to rain and the streets were going to be flooded in the community. And so chisme, for me, is really a way of resource sharing.
Love that. Hello, everyone. I am Pam Covarrubias. I love chisme. My work is all based on chisme. And so the first memory of chisme is also with my mom. I grew up with a single mom, and I remember church Sundays. We would dread the end of church because we knew that if church ended at 12, we would be at home by like 3 p.m. And we would just be waiting for her. And now looking back, I think that's precisely her form of gathering, her form of building connections. She would always come back with a new recipe to try. She would always come back with some new thing that she learned from all her comadres that she would find after church. And while we were annoyed at the time, I think chisme is so rooted in our culture that we just need to embrace it.
Yeah, no, I love that because, I think when you first hear chisme, it's often denoted as this like very like, oh, that's just gossip, or you're trying to divide people, you're trying to hurt people. And yes, I think there is nuance behind that. But I also think that, the ways in which we learn about stories, especially from our cultures, our ancestors, is through oral stories or through photographic images. Especially like, my parents coming from Mexico, like their form of me being able to connect with the lands that they existed in was through their oral stories or some photos that they kept from when they were children. And I think that like chisme is often used to demonize a lot of women, femmes, trans folks, because it's often related to this gender imbalances of power that exists today in the patriarchal system that we live in today. So to me, there's like two questions here, right? One is like, what makes chisme a form of resistance in the specific work that you're doing in either helping the current generation, giving back to the next generation, but also how do you kind of navigate, the nuance behind chisme? Because, at the end of the day, there's always gossip that gets around, people misinterpret things, and there's, divisions. And I think, even myself when I was younger, just being like someone misconstrued the words I said, and then it got translated a different way, and then it came back to me as if I was saying that. So yeah, I would love to learn more.
I think for me, my work, I interview people and I literally started asking people questions because I wanted our stories to be told from our perspective. I was tired of the stereotypical, the gang member, the maid, all of those stories that are not true. There are some of them, but that's not all of us. We all have stories from being a teacher all the way to inventing hot Cheetos. And I wanted those stories to be shared from our perspective precisely to avoid those misconstructions and changing the narrative. We have our own agency and we can tell the stories. And I think that's why it's important. And that's why I do this work.
For me as a researcher, I think I love novelas. And we want to be able to tell a novela that connects with people, that uses data, that not only uplifts the problems in our communities, but also talks about the contributions that we make. For example, Latinas are driving small businesses in our country, right? We don't talk about those positive things. And so for me, Chisme is also a way of changing who gets to tell the story for us. Much, como dijiste tú, like it is really about us taking that narrative, telling it ourselves, and bringing others in that process with us as well.
Wait, what's your favorite novela?
Marimar, I still like that
Oh,
one.
yes.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what you guys had mentioned earlier, especially I think being a young person in this space, we use gossiping or chisme as a form of talking to each other. And I think that these conversations that we're having today are super important, and the youth should be involved in these conversations. And I think that starts with normalizing these topics, having these conversations with your friends. I know I talk about it all the time. I love talking about what the current events or educating my friends and them educating me. I think that that's why chisme is so important, and educating one another. So
Yeah, it's almost like you're also strengthening the bond with person, because I think, you build that connection.
yes, exactly. And not only is it helping each other, but it's they're able to, whatever they learn from the conversation you have, they're able to tell their friends, and you're able to help your community come together and try to push for change. And I think that's what's important, especially with the crisis. It's very important, especially right now.
No, absolutely. And I think, this is kind of like ongoing to just all the crises we're facing, climate crisis, immigration crisis, like everything that our communities are under attack and constantly being subjugated in this, world that we're living today. Is like, I kind of want to share and bring it back to like the careers that a lot of us here today is like, what is that one unique moment and experience that changed the trajectory of your career? Because I think for me, and I'll share this, is that as someone who calls myself an environmentalist now, like I had the biggest struggle to really relate to that word, because I would go to my classes in undergrad and I would just not see anyone who looked like me. And I would not even want to talk about social or racial justice issues, because people were like, we're trying to save the planet. We don't really want to hear about your sad story about you being an immigrant kid. And I remember I had a mentor that straight up told me, was like, you're not working and writing to prove yourself for the dominant white environmental space. You are working for the Latino community, and that's the community who raised you, that's going to continue to be with you and to continue to watch over you. And I think that was really for me to recognize, like, all these stories that we have, like the chancla, the pan dulce, like, we have good and bad memories in Latino cultures, but like, I think for me, like, that's what made me realize, like, this is actually my like superpower that I've had, but I've been told that it's not professional enough, not academic enough, not intellectual enough. And I said, no, I'm all of that, and you cannot take that away from me. So I'm interested to hear about if there was a story or person that led you to your career today.
Okay. I'm a student. I'm 20 years old, and I'm technically in my third year of studying for political science. So I can't really speak too much about career, although I have been a youth organizer. But I think that's a very powerful story. I grew up on the east side, so it's an urban island, and I've seen how we've been disproportionately affected, people of color specifically, and that is what I want to help in my future career. So
And for me, I think when I tell people I have a PhD, people assume I have this very linear trajectory. But the reality is, like, I dropped out of high school. I had kids when I was very young. My kids are now 20 and 22, so they're not kids anymore. I did what many of us in our community do, go to community college and stay there for 6 years. And that was me. And in that process, trying to find myself, what do I study? What do I do with my life? I met someone who was organizing in the environmental justice movement in LA, particularly around water. And he was like, you want to do something with your life? Go back to school, finish your degree, go to a place like UCLA, take urban planning classes, go to the geography department. And when I did, I was like, oh my gosh, these are the whitest spaces ever. Why did you tell me to do this? It is scary to be in these spaces, like you said, where your voices don't matter, where your stories, it's not a systematic thing that you're seeing, so they're not valid. But having that one person, it's just like so important, that one person that tells you you need to change the way that you're looking at life and you need to really show up for your community. And this is the way that you could do it. That was incredibly powerful, completely changed my life.
Okay. For me is when I realized I had access. Fun fact, I used to train construction workers on heat stress prevention. And I realized as I was training them, I would do it in Espanol because I have access to language. And I would often use storytelling for them to understand. Because I would say, look, if I just used heat stress language, they would be like, okay, I can't wait to go home and have my beer. But I would give the example of the beans, the frijoles. What happens if you let your beans under the heat for too long? They're gonna burn, they're not good. And so when I realized I was able to bring our own cultural awareness and storytelling back to them in a way that they understood, that's when I was like, okay, I have something that I can give back to the people that look like me that may not have access directly, but I can be that bridge, and it's a responsibility, so I take that serious.
No, absolutely. And I love these stories that are coming up from these pivotal moments of our careers and even activist journeys, just having to kind of push for it. And, one of the things that we see right in the Latino community today is the amount of misinformation and disinformation. And we're not talking about, Latinos who go on the other side of the political spectrum, but rather the ways that our communities are easily indoctrinated to believe, in a way, pseudoscience, or, I don't know if, raise your hand if you have a grandparent or a comadre or tia that has been watching AI Facebook videos. Yeah, it's my parents too. It's becoming, I had to go on my parents' account and block the accounts because I was like, no, what are you doing? These are cheap cartoons that are stolen from artists, but also what information is this? And I think that, a lot of the times when we talk about the climate crisis and what I've seen with Latino communities is that it's not that they just deny climate change. It's sometimes in a way, different avenues open up of how they, get into disinformation. And not saying all of religion, but sometimes they'll be like, oh, if si Dios quiere, if it's gonna happen, it's no, we have the power to change. I'll be saying that religion is gonna take us all out when it needs to. I think there's a lot of apocalyptic language around there. But what advice do you have for Latinos who don't often feel themselves either in movement spaces or even in environmental and climate spaces of what they should be doing or how they should be communicating into this traditional language? Because I even struggle sometimes to when I do Spanish videos, I'm is this coming off as too academic? How do I make it more culturally resonant?
Well, I think it's storytelling, chisme, build a connection in a way that people can understand. And for example, when I talk to my mom, I remind her that she's been an environmentalist her whole life. And I was annoyed when I was young because I didn't know if I was opening actual butter or if it was going to be salsa, And so the reuse, reduce, and recycle has been in our communities forever. We just didn't name that. We just named it, we are resourceful, or we didn't even have a name. And so I think bringing it back and using the multi-generational knowledge that has been passed on for so long without having like a proper name. It's a way that builds us connections and bridges so we can all understand that we can do something. Un granito de arena goes a long way once we put all of ours together.
So I manage the Latino Climate and Health dashboard at my job. And that's been one of the biggest challenges for us. How do we make this data that can seem very abstract relevant to our communities? And one way that we've challenged ourselves is to repackage some of that information that already exists, because there's tons of data on the impacts of climate change. There's a lot of data on health, et cetera. But how do we make it speak to our communities? And so in this dashboard, what we do is we aggregate all of that data and we tell a story about the Latino barrio, the Latino neighborhood, because it's a lot easier for me to go tell my dad, who was a jardinero for many years, outdoor worker, hey, did you know that Latino neighborhoods in California experience 60 extreme heat days every year on average? That is a powerful number that clicks with him and his experience than me giving him like whatever vague scientific explanation, right? And so that's one way where we can challenge ourselves as policymakers, as researchers, as people in the community, just learning some of this basic language around data and then how we apply it to like our communities more specifically.
Thank you. And I really like the adding your little bit of grain of sand. I think a lot of youth feel like they don't know enough about environmental justice. And as the doctor had said earlier, it's okay to not know as long as you're trying to keep informing yourself. And I really resonated with that because I think these conversations are very important. Specifically with the misinformation, we think that typically only older people fall for misinformation, but that's not true, right? Like I've had a whole bunch of friends who say, hey, did you see what happened with so and so and so? When it's not true, right? So young people, we have to be aware that we can still fall for misinformation. It's maybe we're not falling for like the AI videos that his grandparents are falling for, but still we have to make sure we're checking our sources and before we say things with our friends. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are like the different avenues and just the reminders for our communities just to be like, okay, you know, we're all going to have different approaches and theories of changes, like from a local level of like, if I can't talk about climate change, I'll talk about your food. If like I talk about the data, I'm going to talk about this, because my dad also is a gardener, and like I tell him like, do not work, and he'll be like, no, like that's just this is the Latino thing or something with men, honestly. I just cannot stand them. Just kidding. But I think for me, like, you know, I think there's so many different stories that are unlocking from different generations. And like you said here, like for me, it's like, what type of intergenerational stories do you want to see more of in your respective spaces, and what you do and how that can actually be used as a climate solution? Because it's true. I think that on my end, it's not to say that there's no elders in the environmental space. There's definitely a lot, but I have found it very hard in my early years when I was in college, like to even be like, who is like a Latino in these environmental spaces? Because everywhere I go, it is white faces, and I feel so heavy that I don't know how to connect on that end.
Yeah, and I think that we can, as youth, we can also reach out to organizations like Moms Clean Air Force or Make the Road Nevada to be able to ignite kind of change. I know as a youth organizer, I worked with a lot of youth who wanted to learn and wanted to be part of these conversations, but didn't have the resources or the availability to be able to do this. And I think seeing youth are the next generation, right? They're who are going to be affected by this climate crisis. Their kids are going to be affected by this. So I think getting them to talk more about these issues that at hand is very important. So I think reaching out to organize or partner organizations, I would say, I know there's a whole bunch of clubs at UNLV who focus on environmental justice, and I encourage the youth, college students, high school students, middle school students to, reach out to these organizations, or even myself?
I think for me, seeing spaces like this, it's just beautiful to see like all the Black and brown faces in this space, like the allies in this space. And we really need these spaces to show our communities that this topic is important for us and that there's others like us working in these spaces, even if there's few of us. And then I think for the youth, just like reaching out to people that you see that you might want to get to know more or learn about their job. Like I get emails all the time from Latino students who want to learn more about the work that I do and what research is all about. And I will go to bat for you and try to open up an opportunity for you at our research center. So I think like that's really important for us to be able to extend a hand and open doors for other people because that has been done to us, and then to continue to create spaces like this.
I think two things come up for me. One is to gamify things. We often, the chisme comes with, because we don't talk about Bruno, we don't talk about certain things. So how could we make it fun and maybe bring out a loteria and then bring up the topic like, by the way, did you know that blah, 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 in ways that make it easy for the conversation to begin, and especially multi-generational, because we all exist in multi-generational households, which I think it's super fun. And so gamifying it inside of the house, I think it's one way that has helped me have those conversations. And outside of the house, I think it's one, giving myself permission to take up space. And if I'm afraid still to take up space, I think finding those allies to say, hey, could you like make me a lead in, as I have ideas to share, but maybe my voice is not going to be heard, the first one to be heard. So when you have the floor, could you open the door for me, and then I can share and have those conversations also with the people around us, so we can all share, because we all have stories to tell.
Yeah, I love that you're like seeking for resources and for help. Like I'll be honest here, like especially young people here, it's like ask for mentorship. That was the most hardest thing in college. Like I was so embarrassed to ask someone that was maybe like 3 years older than me, and I was like maybe 20 and they were 23, to ask for mentorship. And now it's like, I'm in my new elder years as I enter this new generation. But it's like, when I mentor a lot of undergrads now, they're just like, they sometimes get so afraid. And I'm like, if you're afraid to speak to me, I don't know, you're going to speak to a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old, 60-year-old. So I was like, let's get this normalized. And really, like, mentors have been the ones who have gotten me. And also mentors learn from you too. Like I have a mentor, she's in her late 40s, and she learned so much from me and I learned so much from her. It's a very symbiotic relationship. So just reminding yourselves out there, it's like, yes, we want community, yes, we want connections, but how many of us are willing to maintain those relationships? Because it is hard to maintain relationships. Everyone's busy, everyone got bills to pay, but it's like showing up for people really does matter. And I think this is actually an example. But the last thing I was going to say is that we were actually going to have a loteria for this climate achievement, but the one that we did in LA, we did have one. We had a lot of raffles and people were going crazy with the frijoles. But next time we will bring it. I will definitely bring it. I have a millennial loteria game cards like for millennials, and then we have a Gen Z one. But anyway, the Gen Z was not that fun for me. I was like, I don't understand these trends anymore. New older generation. But the last question, just to kind of go about as we close out this panel, is like, how do you stay rooted in joy, especially everything that's happening in the world? Like, how do you remain yourself in somewhat of a state of homeostasis or some balance, knowing the fact that, yeah, there's moments you're going to be sad, angry, and also moments you're just like, I'm okay,
I think of one thing that my mom would always tell us. I grew up in a single mother household, and when it would be like Father's Day, for example, we would be like, oh, we don't have a dad to come. And she would often say, you have a choice. You have people, we cannot control what people will do or say, but you have a choice in how you are going to respond. And so when I hear news, when I see videos, when I find myself in moments of sadness, I give myself permission to be sad, because I do think feelings are to be felt. And then I make a choice of how I'm going to act on it afterwards. Am I going to I love having 5-minute pity parties. Listen, they're fun. And your body needs to release in some way. But once that's done, then what's the next choice that I'm going to take? in order for us to move forward, because we have agency, we have power, we have voices, we can stand in our truth. And so it's always bringing yourself back to what is it that I can choose in this moment in a way that I'm still safe.
For me, I look for spaces again like this, where there's a shared respect for our stories and shared love for our stories. And I also think about all of the accomplishments that we have made as a community to get to where we're at. The fact that we have a convening like this, that means we have power. And so in difficult situations like the one we are in, reminding ourselves that we still have power has been incredibly important. And it fills me with joy to think about seeing leaders like you who are like the next generation and continuing to hold that power.
Thank you. And I would also ditto what you both said. I agree. Spaces like these definitely give me joy, and seeing how people are willing to do change, people are willing to learn. I think hearing bad news, it's on the flip side, it's, you know, like we said, progress isn't always linear, right? It's gonna take time. So grounding myself in these kind of spaces around people who also care about the same issues, I think is very helpful to me.
Yeah, I love all of these like responses. I think, you know, for me too, it's like what grounds me. They don't call them the Mexican white dogs, but it's the crusty white dogs, the Maltese. I always make fun of my friends if they had one, but I adopted one 2 years ago. He's like a little rat dog. I don't know what, he's like a mixed breed or something, but when I adopted him, he was like barking and loud, and I was like, I can't stand this. Now I love him. Like, he's like always with me. He brings me a lot of joy. But I think in terms of like, you know, our movement spaces, like, it's just like, for me, just being around so many people from different landscapes, from different states, like I get to learn more about what's happening in Nevada, like everything. What are the issues compared to LA? Like, you know, we all have different issues, but we have the same struggles. And so I think the more that we're able to connect those dots, the faster that we are able to kind of achieve liberation for all of our communities. So thank you so much again, everyone. Please give a large round of applause to our audience, and please talk to them, network with them, connect with them.
Picture, we'll take a picture of it. And place you in the mic. Bring the mic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all for that incredible conversation. We just got a little chismecito. Now you guys are going to get a little secret from me. The next panel is my favorite panel. I loved all the panelists and all the panels, but having Latinas share their work, I think it's like my favorite part of the entire program. Next, we're proud to feature a panel highlighting Latina leadership in clean energy, utility reform, and climate policy. This conversation will be moderated by Emilia Pablo, host of Desde Nevada and former White House speechwriter in the Obama administration. Joining her are three inspiring leaders. Assemblymember Cynthia Moore, representing East Las Vegas in the Nevada Assembly. She is a longtime advocate for environmental justice and immigrant rights, and champions policies that ensure energy affordability, clean air, and equity for working class families. And we also have Audrey Peral. She is the program director at Chispa, Nevada, where she develops Latino grassroots leadership for climate and environmental justice. She trains young leaders and mobilizes families to hold decision makers accountable on clean energy and equity. And she's also the reason why I'm in the space. Jessica Ordóñez Lancet. She is the Senior Director of Energy and Environmental Campaigns at the Center for American Progress. She has over a decade of experience ensuring Latino voices are central in shaping national climate and clean energy policy. Please join me in welcoming Emilia Pablo and our Latina leaders on the stage.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon, Sakchi Saatatu. It's a pleasure for me to be here. What an honor to be here. I just had to say my greeting in the 3 languages that I speak. Proud Mexican American from Oaxaca, Mexico. I came here to the US like many of our families, just looking for a better life. That's what my parents wanted for me at the age of 7. And they never imagined that we would be here at Make the Road 2025. And what brings us all together here is a beautiful thing. When they asked me to join this panel, I thought, what a honor to be here. And what unites the 4 of us is that we're Latina women, we're moms. Yay to all the moms in the house. Claro que sí, un aplauso para todas las mamás chingonas, fregonas, que trabajamos tan duro. We work really, really hard. I see myself in Assemblywoman Cynthia Moore, in Audrey Peral, and Jessica Ordóñez. These ladies, I want you to hear directly from them, their stories, because we are women working hard with our own sweat, trying to make a living. And now that we're in this other stage of motherhood, we just don't want the best air and quality of life for our children, for us. Now it's also for our children. And because we love our kids, now we're thinking about a better life for the children of our children, our grandchildren. So what a beautiful thing to be brought into this world. And my reason for being here was thanks to Assemblywoman Cynthia Moore. Before she was Assemblywoman, we did a lot of projects together. And when she needed me, I was there. She said, I'm looking for 2 children. I said, I'll volunteer my children. Vámonos. What do we have to do? It's about climate power. Even more reason, to get my kids involved. But I want to start out with Cynthia, Assemblywoman Cynthia Moore. I'm still getting used to, calling her Assemblywoman. She deserves that title. She worked hard. She had a campaign and she won that position, and so proud of her. So I want each of these ladies, please, to just tell a little bit about who you are, so the community here present and those watching us at home, whether you're watching us in your cocinita, en El Salvador, en México, en Guatemala, en cualquier parte del mundo, estamos completamente en vivo. We're here live at Make the Road Nevada in Las Vegas, Nevada, and you're gonna be hearing right now from wonderful, inspiring women. Assemblywoman Cynthia Moore, tell us a little bit about your background, your upbringing. What can you share with the community watching us at home and here present?
Thank you for that amazing introduction, Emilia. And even myself, I'm still trying to get used to that title. Still very new to me. But I'm very excited to be here and Make the Road, where I recently was working at, and also to be part of this summit with EcoMadres and Moms Clean Air Force. It's like 2 of my worlds have collided, because I also worked for Moms Clean Air Force and EcoMadres before I went on to lead the Nevada Environmental Justice Coalition. Just a little bit about me. I am the first Mexican-born woman elected to the state legislature.
Aplausos, bravo.
And just like many families from other countries, my parents immigrated from Jalisco, Mexico, when I was just an infant, to California in the pursuit of the American dream. Unfortunately, they quickly realized that they were not going to be able to achieve the American dream in California. And 2 of my tios who were working in construction dragged us out here, which I'm really grateful, because Nevada, I may not have been born in Nevada, but I recently tattooed the state of Nevada. I am a Nevadan. Nevada has given my family so much opportunity. When I was a kid, we were renters. We moved every time our lease was up. I went to 5 different elementary schools. We relied on public transportation and the my tios and family friends who would give us rides just to go grocery shopping. And when we came to Las Vegas, the very first place we lived at was at an apartment right by the Westgate. So every time, every time I drive by there, I'm like, oh, I remember we used to live on that street. And one of the best memories that I have growing up was when we lived there, we used to walk to Circus, and every weekend, that was the thing that we did as a family. Eventually, we moved to the apartments right by Rancho High School, which is in the district that I now represent, Assembly District 11. My parents were able to buy a house, and they moved a few blocks away from Rancho High School, and that's where I grew up. That's where my brother was born. And now I live in the house right next door to my parents in the same neighborhood that I grew up. And that's part of the reason why I decided to run, because growing up, I didn't see any representation, anyone that looked like me, anyone that had the same story or similar stories as my family. That has changed in recent years, but that's why I do what I do, and I fight for environmental justice, because my district here in East Las Vegas, that's where we have the urban heat island and the poor air quality that causes a lot of issues with our young kids. But that's what motivates me to get up there and bring up the issues that not everybody's thinking about.
Gracias, Cynthia. And now Audrey Peral, Program Director with Chispa, Advancing Grassroots Latino Leadership in Environmental Justice. I met Audrey a while back, before she was a mom, I believe, or during that time. But what brings us together is that, not just because we're moms, we're gonna quit and stop. No, Audrey is that mom who is working, I think, even harder because she has her child now. So tell us a little bit about you, Audrey.
Gracias. Audrey, she, her, ella. I think one of the most important things to share about myself is that I started actually as a volunteer for Make the Road Nevada, actually. So I'm excited to be here. I came into this space. Yeah, I came into this space as a mom that really just wanted to take action. During that time, I was a fully undocumented individual. So, me and my son, we felt the need to do something. And so we took action, and we took action together. And I very quickly learned and kind of just grew in my leadership, thanks to wonderful organizations that are on the ground that are really investing in the leadership of our comunidades. And so I really took that and kind of ran with it and just continued to learn and grow. And so although I came into the space through the immigration lens, I very quickly learned how our comunidades are being impacted by so many intersectional issue areas. It's not just immigration, right? It's also the economic justice, environmental justice, housing justice, all of these things that really intersect and are affecting our comunidades. And so I came in through this whole different lens, but very quickly learned and grew and, have continued to do this work alongside my son for many years. Ahorita ya creció. De hecho, he's actually just turned 18. So I now take that same drive that I took for my son. I think about, maybe the future of his kids or my comunidad. I still have a lot of relatives, family members, aging parents, so many folks that are being affected by these issues. And so when I think about why I continue to do this work, it really is for each and every single one of you. And I'm here really I'm always shocked. An environmental justice leader. I'm like, me, yo? No es cierto. But yeah, right? Maybe we don't look at ourselves that way. And I love what was said in the panel earlier, because in reality, so many, the moms are leaders, líderes in their households, in their communities. And I know that I grew up recycling and doing all these things that I never connected to environmental justice issues, especially because, as it was also mentioned earlier, right? A lot of these spaces are full of, white faces and folks that are considered experts. And so it can be quite intimidating for folks like us to step into these spaces. But I'm here because we need to be here. We need to be a part of the conversation. We need to continue to learn. We need to continue to evolve ourselves and really be a part of the solution. You all have the solutions. You are the ones that are closest to the issues. And so the issues, the solutions really live with you all. And so if you leave with anything today, I hope that it's my testament that you belong to be here and this is your space. And we might not feel maybe issue experts, but that's not the truth. The truth is that you are an expert in your experience, and your voice and your experience is really valuable. And I am so happy to see so many people here, and we'll continue to invite y'all to get involved.
Wonderful. And now I want you to meet a wonderful woman. Now we're here at the local level, but Jessica Ordóñez is at the national level. I'm so proud to say that she works for one of the most important think research-based companies in this country. She is Senior Director of Energy and Environment Campaigns for the Center for American Progress. If you're a journalist watching this, you know that we go to CAP, the CAP, the Center for American Progress, to find research, data, statistics. That's where this amazing woman is at today, representing all Latinas research at a national level. Bienvenida, Jessica.
Gracias, Emilia. Thank you. That is a very kind intro. Thank you. So let's see some things about me. I am from San Jose, Costa Rica, born and raised. I moved to the United States 11 years ago. I, saludos a todos mis hermanos centroamericanos in the room and like watching from home. One thing that where what got me started in this field was, being born in Costa Rica, such a green country where nature was always such a big part of who I was. I was always playing outside. So I got started in the conservation movement from a very early age. When I was 16, I got to volunteer at it's called the Ocional Wildlife Refuge in Costa Rica. It's basically the only place in Costa Rica where it is legally allowed to harvest turtle eggs. And this is done in, coordination, with the local community. So because they get so many turtles, so many eggs, the first rounds are always usually destroyed by the second round of turtles that come in. So they developed this program where the same community that lives there takes advantage of this first round of eggs. They, it's turned into a livelihood for the community. And then it is the same community who, takes, care of the species, they protect the species. So being a part of this, even as a volunteer from a very early age of this new take of environmentalism, where you do it in conjunction in coordination with the community. And it is not just, the old school, way that has really affected, I think, the conservation and the environmental movement, but doing it in working with the community to protect the species, to get the environmental impact that we want, really shaped the way I have grown in my career, always trying to find solutions that work both for what we're trying to achieve in terms of environmental progress, in terms of climate progress, but also making sure that it takes into consideration the local communities and the people that are going to you very well said, the people that know what works for the communities.
And somehow you always end up at the national level, Jessica, right? I've seen you work for other organizations also at the national level. So kudos to you. Aplausos para ti, Jessica.
Gracias.
Well, why don't we get started with our Assemblywoman, Cynthia Moore, and tell us, Assemblywoman, what challenges are you seeing in your community here in Las Vegas? We all know that the majority of the Latino population here is Mexican, about 600,000 Mexicans. We have Salvadorians here too. We have Guatemalans. We're a mixed Latino community, but what are you seeing in your community, in your district, and how can they also stand up and fight for a better climate energy?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Emilia. One of the biggest issues that I saw last cycle when I was running and knocking on doors in my neighborhood and in my district, the economy was the number one issue that folks kept bringing up. But another thing that they kept bringing up was the high cost of energy during the summer months. Just last summer, the average Nevadan, their energy bill was $700. This year, it's $800. And with that big ugly bill that was just recently signed, we're expected to see utilities to rise even more. So with speaking to people in my community, I did introduce a bill that would have made it so utilities wouldn't shut off for non-payment during extreme weather events. Unfortunately, that bill never got a hearing, didn't go anywhere. We ran out of time. But unfortunately, we're only up there for 120 days, so we ran out of time during the legislative session. But it is something that I feel it's really important to bring back, and I plan on bringing it back. At the very least, at least update the Consumer Bill of Rights that hasn't been updated since it was adopted in the 90s. And it's currently not in NRS, so it's not in Nevada law. So at any given time, the PUCN can just say, we don't have to follow that. We're getting rid of the Consumer Bill of Rights. So that's something that is close to my heart, and I plan on working on that for next session. The other thing too is my district has a lot of folks that work outdoors, and
Landscapers,
yeah,
airport workers, for example.
yeah. And in 2023, we had, when I was still working for the Nevada Environmental Justice Coalition, we had a bill with my senator, SB 427, that would have protected outdoor workers and indoor workers as well from poor air quality and extreme heat, and also poor air quality. Unfortunately, it was the other party didn't agree that this was something necessary. It died in the assembly, didn't make it out of the legislative process. OSHA recently adopted some heat regs that went into effect April 1st, and quite honestly, they're not good. Business and industry is really happy about it. That to me tells me it benefits employers more than it benefits employees. So they all know I'm keeping an eye out on that, because protecting people that are the backbone of our community and our city is very important to me. So if there's any loopholes that need to be closed, I will be working on bringing that back. The other thing that's also really important to me is poor air quality. So I'm looking into that as well, because it does have a negative effect in East Las Vegas, where I live. So it's also personal to me. It's not an issue that's so far away. I also have family members that till this day still work outdoors, and neighbors that work outdoors. So this issue.
And we're outdoors.
Yeah.
And the visitors are outdoors all the time.
Yeah. So it is something that's very personal to me. And it's more than just a talking point. It's something that needs to get done and addressed.
And Assemblywoman, it's no secret, we're seeing rollbacks with this administration. It's no secret. We all know that EPA has been hurt so much, and we feel it here from DC to Las Vegas. And just, that reminder that we have power when it comes to voting. That wasn't in my line here, but I'm just saying it. We all have a power to vote when elections come, and elections matter, just like we have voted here in Las Vegas for Assemblywoman Cynthia Moore. There are more elections to come, and but going back to our conversation here, to the rollbacks, it's hurting us in Las Vegas, in Nevada, in Reno. I know Audrey has been at the forefront of this issue. I've seen her work hard in this community, and I want you, Audrey, to tell the community, share with the people at home what you're working on and how they can also get involved, regardless of your educational background, regardless si hablas español, si hablas inglés o no, or no hablas inglés, no hablas español. Audrey is working here. Grassroots organizer is when I met you. But tell us about your work, Audrey.
Thank you. Yes. So at Chispa, Nevada, what we're doing is really coming together as a community. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, right? The power, we really need that people power. Cynthia touched on it a little bit right now about all of these efforts that are being made. But in reality, what we really need is that people power to really pass these pieces of legislation. We are up against corporate monopolies And so what we really need is for everyone to get involved. At Chispa, what we're doing is grassroots community organizing. It's holding spaces for everyday people to feel welcome. We hold a bilingual space. It's actually a Spanish first space to make sure that our tias or abuelitas, everyone is included in the conversation. Because as I mentioned earlier, we all belong to be here. And in fact, we need a seat at that table where the decisions are being made for our families. Mamas like me, I know that we're thinking about our kids every single day, right? All the time. And so we
Tell
want
me
to
about
better-
it.
Yeah. but
I
we
was like,
wanna-
how do I get to this event? And my two kids have to go in at what 8 a.m. and then the other one at 8:30. So it's a lot of juggling. We need 2 extra arms.
No, we bring them with us. Is how I used to do it, right? Is bring my kid
We
along
figure
with
it
me.
out, right, ladies or men, gentlemen that have children?
Yeah, I think Mary actually touched on it earlier about like having conversations with them early on and making sure that we expose them to this information. For a long time, we've been left out of these spaces, left out of conversations, and it's so important for us to involve ourselves, to inform ourselves, to really take action. And so that's where community orgs like mine come in, right? Where it's like a space, a welcoming space. If you are a parent or not a parent, just a person that is worried about our current climate crisis, that is worried about all the things that have been talked about today, about our air quality, about the increasing heat, especially here in Las Vegas, right? This is your topic, this is your subject, this is your space, you belong there. And so what can people do? They can get involved, they can continue to learn and really just come. You're welcome. I promise. I say it all the time. I don't feel like an expert, but I'm here and I'm going to make sure that the people, the spaces that I come into are going to hear about the people that I care about. They're going to hear about my family members, my friends, that they're going to consider them when they're making these very difficult decisions, right? When they're making decisions about our future. So I invite all of y'all to get involved and let's help Cynthia pass these bills.
And Audrey, really quick, before you pass on the mic to Jessica, for those watching at home and aren't very involved, but maybe you're inspiring them to get involved, what are some of the things that they could be doing physically? Is it like, tell us a little bit about what they would see or do in action?
Of course. So what we do is we hold monthly community meetings where we come in and talk about the issues and how these issues
Niños are
affecting our
welcome.
family. Kids are welcome.
Right.
We have food. We have an interpreter, right? It's a fully bilingual space. It is really designed to be a welcoming space for folks to come in and learn. And really, it's an investment in leadership into our comunidades. I firmly believe that the leaders that we need to be making the decisions for us are in this room, they're the ones that are often left out of the conversations. But that's why it's so important for us to continue to learn and grow. I mean, some of the things that we do, que no hacemos, right? Like we actually have,
Juggling.
we have a hike coming up, right? And that's something that we're doing. I mean, sometimes it's just kind of like engaging in conversation in different ways and in different spaces, but it really is about that investment in leadership and like making sure that our comunidades know that not only do they have a voice, but it's the most important voice that needs to be heard.
Awesome. Thank you, Audrey. As you're watching, we're here talking about how we can get involved. We're moms, not just because you're a mom, you're not going to get involved or you have excuses. Nada de excusas. Si te vas a unir a una causa, hazlo del corazón. In this case, these wonderful ladies have a reason to work hard now, not only by themselves, but now we're trying to do what we love to do with our children, with our niños. And I want to take advantage of Jessica's presence here. Tell us, Jessica, a little bit. She works at the national level. So I'm thinking, Jessica, if they're watching you at home, please share with our audience and the audience here present, how can we fight against these rollbacks? What can we do to continue pushing for clean energy? We know it's not the end of the world. We know there's going to be more elections coming. We know people are eventually going to have to leave office. Their time ends. Political positions are not forever. The time comes when your position ends and a new person is replaced. Tell us a little bit, Jessica, how we can not feel so like, que termine esta administración and we'll figure out what we'll do. No, what can we do to act now, ahora mismo?
Gracias, Emilia. yes, for those of us working in the policy space at the national level, I think the most important thing that we can be doing is getting out of that DC policy bubble and bringing it back to on the ground impacts. So, we often ask ourselves, how do our policies impact people on the ground? But we need to go beyond that and also ask, like, how are people interacting with our policies? How are people on the ground interacting with our issues? Like you said, in the last 7 months, we've seen so many losses, so many setbacks for our movement. And this has raised some voices, I'm sure, like you're familiar, that have started to raise the question around the validity, around the popularity of our issues. But the reality is that when you bring it to like on the ground, like people on the ground really care about our issues. Why? Because it speaks directly to their health, their economic well-being, the safety of their children. So, when we talk about, for example, the endangerment finding and the proposal to roll that back. We know that the endangerment finding is, based on scientific evidence that climate change is a danger to public health, that it endangers like our well-being and also like the, well-being of our future generations. So, like with that in mind, like, it's not question of why we turn on the TV and we see how extreme weather is destroying homes, destroying communities, how pollution keeps on like endangering, like risking the health of like people in this country, how like climate change is raising costs for all of us. And in the case of Latinos, we might not use the wonky policy DC terms to talk about climate change, but we know climate change because we live with it. We know pollution because we live with it. So when we talk about our issues, like I call for people at the national level, I think that the important part there is that like we talk about our like proposals, our ideas in the terms that resonate with the communities, in the terms and in the way that people interact with them, in the way that they live them. Just this week, for example, at CAP, at the Center for American Progress, we released a report that shows that in 41 states in DC, 102 utilities are raising rates for consumers. This includes Southwest Gas here in Nevada. Like the other side of the aisle is working tirelessly to frame that as a direct impact of the investments in clean energy. Our job is to be very clear. First of all, that is not true. Second of all, like Americans deserve reliable and affordable power, electricity. We deserve like not only the like most affordable sources of electricity, but we also deserve, electricity that doesn't pollute our communities, that doesn't endanger like the well-being of our children. And the same goes to like when you talk about pollution in the Latino community, like we know that our community is 3 times more likely to live in areas with failing air quality like grades when you compare it to the white community, for example. So and like we also have a report coming on Monday that like you were saying, like all of these environmental rollbacks that we're seeing from the administration, like are also like this report that is coming on Monday, like highlights how like we're going to see like higher rates of risks of cancer all around the country because of these rollbacks. Like and we can also talk about asthma, like we were talking about like before, and like how this has a disproportionate impact on our children, how like higher rates of asthma mean like they it impacts their like well-being, it impacts their like academic performance, therefore it impacts like their like future opportunities, it forces us to miss like work days, entonces nos impacta la economía y la seguridad de nuestras familias. So I think our job at the national level is to not get so into the wonky parts of the policy as like we have so often done, but like bring it back to those tangible on the ground impacts that people can understand. And not forget that like just 7 months ago we were hearing about Make America Healthy Again, right? where did that end? Like, where are we with Make America Healthy Again? You know, like, and let's, like, not even just the political part, but like, let's remind people that like Americans deserve clean air, they deserve clean water, we can afford clean air and clean water, and like we deserve leaders that will put our families first and not their fossil fuel donors who are the only ones benefiting from this.
I love those ending thoughts of yours, Jessica, on the dot. And that's why you're here. I'm glad we have someone from the national level, from DC here to educate us. So what I'm hearing from Jessica is, let's read more, let's learn more. And I think the place that you're at, you can educate us a lot, Jessica. Send us those reports. We won't mind, right? All these emails from Jessica, from the Center for American Progress. Inundate us, enlighten us. We need to work hard and change our communities here at home. And I know, like, every year I'm asking the sun gods, los dioses del sol, please make it just a little less this coming year. But instead, we know it's a reality. It's getting even hotter and hotter each day here in this beautiful desert. So I'm also getting hot here. Too many lights here, right? Ladies, please tell us, we're gonna wrap up, but we wanna hear, you know, how you, yeah, we'll go with Cynthia. We'll go with Assemblywoman Cynthia Moore. Tell us, Cynthia, for those watching, it's so important. We want you to get involved. We want you to look up, go Google EcoMadres, go to their Facebook, go to their TikTok. How can the community, how can our Latinas, the mujeres watching us, get involved? It's no excuse if you have children. I know I used to think when I had my kids, oh, now no more doing my hair, no more doing my nails, because, you know, you're like having a baby there crying in the middle of the night. Like, you forget about yourself and you forget about your community. But we have a reason to live. We have a reason to fight for a community, for the children. What can we do, Cynthia?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I know a lot of times we think, I'm just one person, I really can't do much, but you can do a lot. In 2008, I was the environmental organizer for Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, and I would get intimidated walking into those rooms because, one, I was the youngest. I was young once. Two, I was the only woman there, and also the only Latina. But also, as I started doing this work, I realized that many folks in our community feel like their stories don't matter. It does matter. We hear all the wonky talk, you know, that we hear a lot of the scientists talk about, but what you're living, your lived experience matters. And it's also important to get involved with all the different organizations. But when you see an environmental justice champion that's up for re-election, we need your help there too, knocking on doors, making calls for us, as well as coming for Environmental Justice Day at the legislature. I know that they've been doing that for a few sessions now. It's hard to go up there, but come. Like, as a legislator, I love it when I see members of the community in the building, more so than the men in suits that are paid to be there and not care about the issue.
Wow, that's incredible. I hope you heard that. I'm tempted to translate it in Spanish really quick, just that little ending. That was so important. Si estás viendo en casita lo que la asambleísta Cynthia Moore dijo, que ella es más impactada cuando ve a nuestra comunidad, a nuestra gente dando su testimonio. Le impresiona más ver a nuestra gente, a nuestra raza, al pueblo, estar ahí presente para un cambio, para apoyar una ley, que ver a personas ahí abogando en sus trajes. Sabemos que son gente de dinero, que solo tienen otros intereses. That was great, Cynthia. Thank you for that thought. And now your final thought, how we can get involved. Audrey, you're on the ground. Dile a nuestra comunidad que nos ve en cualquier parte del mundo cómo se pueden levantar de ese sillón. How can they get involved?
I would say join organizations on the ground like Chispa Nevada, where we're welcoming you with open arms. If you feel like this is an issue that you care about or are concerned about, or you worry about your child's future, or worry about your parents, your comunidad, if you care, which I know the majority of you do care, please join us. We need every single one of you to get involved, to actively continue to learn and use your voice to ensure that our community has that type of representation. So you can follow us at Chispa Nevada. We're on all social media. We're located in Northern Nevada as well as Las Vegas.
Reno, the people watching us from Reno.
Yes, please reach out. We're eager to have you here. As I mentioned, for us, it's really important to continue to invest in the leadership of our comunidades. So if you're interested in getting involved, please do. If you're just like thinking about it, maybe just start following us. Start slow, right? I think that's how we all start. It starts with like
Yes.
one decision of showing up and then learning, and then you just kind of keep showing up and continue to show up. Even when it might feel a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit scary, show up. We need you to.
A little sun won't hurt. A little walk, knocking on doors for a campaign won't hurt, right?
Yeah, or just joining us for our community meetings and have, even in a small space where you can share your concerns, your thoughts, right? Like we're here to listen. We have active comités that are actively working around a number of these different issue areas that we were mentioned around, like clean air and our utilities. And so we have a space and we are eager to have you there. So los invito.
Jessica, your final thoughts?
I think that, historically, but also especially in the last 7 months, our communities have faced countless injustices. Like we've seen so much harm being done to the Latino community all around this country that, I would call to all of us here to take that anger and that hurt and that pain and that fear that we feel and turn it into action. To quote Silvio Rodriguez, like this is something that I tell myself often, like la rabia es mi vocación. Anger is what fuels my drive. And like that doesn't mean that like you show up with anger, but you show up with like strength to fight for your community. Like many and like the panels before like said, like we do this, like there's a purpose behind like what we're doing. Like we do it to have an impact on our families, on our children, on our communities, on our people, in nuestra raza. And really like, and we all have a voice, from like as little or big, like we can have an impact. And like wherever you are, like if you're watching from, like the country or outside this country, like this is a global fight. Like we need everyone to be fighting to really like tackle this crisis. And like, so take that anger, that fear that you rightfully feel, and put it into like, turn it into like the purpose that drives your fight.
And we know that climate affects us in one way or another, whether it's in your pocket, you're paying that bill and it hurts more and more every year, whether it's, this hot weather that we're living, it's just getting hotter and hotter each year. I know that in my case, I was so little, I always had that brown lunch bag that my mom would, pack my lunch, my sandwich or my torta or whatever she packed for me. But that brown lunch bag, it was a plastic one, that brown bag. I had to take that brown bag home every single day. And if I didn't take that brown bag home, I was in big trouble. So I knew like from early on, I better recycle. And that's what my mom taught me. And it was because they were hard days. My mom couldn't afford to buy those bags, have a new one every day. So we all have our stories. We all have things that bring us back to climate power. And I've heard people say, oh, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does matter. It's going to affect us in some way or another. Like I said, whether it's in that bill that you have to pay or in this heat or our health. But, it's been wonderful to chat with you and have this beautiful conversation with amazing women that don't give up here in Las Vegas. And our Jessica, who's in DC, representing us at a national level. Thank you so much for watching. Get involved, Latinas, Latinos. Take your husband, take the niños. Now, instead of one person helping out in the community, like we're 4 or 5, we're multiplying. So thank you so much for having tune in to this live link, to this live stream with EcoMadres. Știți ni brata tu kagiatu, cual perzilat kun swayup tu, știți ni tu bagiatu programa. Estoy dando muchas gracias a la gente que nos está viendo en otras partes del mundo, en zapoteco, mi dialecto, mi lengua natal. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching us. And you can always find positive stories, historias de éxito, positive stories that impact our community. You can learn how other Latinos and not Latinos too, how they're reaching their goals and their dreams, not only here in the US, but now we're looking for those stories abroad in other countries too. I'm Emilia Pablo, host of Desde Nevada. Thank you for giving me the honor to be here at EcoMadres Summit. Muchas gracias a todos. Hasta luego. Julio, can I give you this?
Can we live? Yes, louder, please, in the room. That was a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much to each and every one of you.
Thank you.
And really, thank you to everyone in the room, everyone who's watching us at home. This has been an incredible, empowering event. I wish it could last all day. I wish it could go through the weekend, but unfortunately, we are getting closer to the end of our time together. But I hope that the conversations that we've had today, that we've heard today, are inspiring you in the room, are inspiring you at home to take action, to connect with us, reach out, English or Spanish. We're here to serve our communities. So please, please, please don't be shy in reaching out. Hit us up in our inboxes. We are here for you. So for this next session of our conversation, I really want to hone in on the beauty that is Mom's Clean Air Force. And sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Liz Hurtado. Hi, everyone. I'm a national field manager with Mom's Clean Air Force, and it's been my pleasure to help organize this event today. This is our second annual EcoMadres Summit, and we hope to see you again next year. I am a mother of 4, and I represent part of this 1.6 million community of parents, moms, dads, abuelas, tias. It's really caregivers across the country who are coming together to take action. We just heard from some powerful Latina leaders, both here in Nevada and also across the country, who are taking action and also helping their communities mobilize. So whether it's showing up at the State House, speaking out at public hearings, or mobilizing your neighbors, having those conversations with your neighbors, having some chisme, the good kind, the climate chisme in your communities. Every single one of these moments are making a difference. It might not click immediately to some, but over time, keep talking to them about it. Over time, they're gonna connect those dots between public health, climate, and what we're seeing in our communities. And that's the power of our voices, that we can enact change over time. And really, this wouldn't be possible without our people on the ground. So thank you to all of our leaders who are helping make those clear connections between the lived experiences and action, and who show us every day what resilience and courage look like. So without further ado, that is why I am so honored to present a very special recognition. It's our inaugural EcoMadres Clean Air Champion Award. This award was created to honor community leaders who truly embody the spirit of EcoMadres, mujeres who courageously raise their voices, mobilize families, and build solutions so that every child has the right to breathe clean air and a safe, healthy future. So today, we are proud to recognize Ana Gonzalez y Jacqueline Banderas. They are known to many in the Nevada community as Las Dos de Sinaloa. Welcome so much, Jackie and Ana. Ana and Jackie are beloved leaders here in the Nevada community, dedicated to who have dedicated hundreds of hours to standing for our community, facing the worst of climate change. Through their years of activism, music, and testimonies and community mobilization, they remind us through their voice, action, and leadership that fighting for clean air and children's health is not only about policy or science, it is about our culture, our familias, and the future we want for the next generation. They bring people together, uplift voices too often left out of the conversation or at the table, and turn climate advocacy into something rooted in love, resilience, and joy. Ana y Jackie, en nombre de Moms Clean Air Force y EcoMadres, es un privilegio presentarles el primer premio EcoMadres Clean Air Champion. ¿Quieren decir unas palabras?
Ay, a ver si no lloro, ¿verdad? Porque yo soy bien chillona. Pero muchas gracias a Comadres y a su gran equipo. Muchas gracias, especial también a nuestra super líder, Mari Warner, por habernos invitado. Pero más que nada, este triunfo, este trofeo, es el resultado de lo que hemos estado luchando. Yo como mamá, nosotros como mamá, obviamente sí estamos molestos por todo lo que está pasando con el clima, sobre el clima, el tema, ¿verdad? Porque yo tengo un niño, tengo una niña con alergias. Ella nació bien, pero de repente empezó. Y nosotros como adultos podemos aguantar todo esto, pero nuestros hijos, que es el futuro, no merecen este clima súper mal, ¿verdad? Así que, Jacqueline, tenemos poco tiempo, pero a Jacqueline, si quieres hacer también unas palabras, mija. Yo le digo mijao porque ella es mil usos, casi hace cosas de hombres, pero es mucha hembra.
Muchas gracias. Bueno, pues no tengo más palabras que decir, más que agradecerles a todos ustedes. Es un privilegio para mí y pues yo lo único que hago es seguir los pasos de mi madre. Yo soy la mayor y así como ella, mi hija también está haciendo lo mismo. Entonces, todos estamos en esta lucha y como mamás les pido a todos levanten las voces que necesitamos, que nos escuchen para que todo esto tenga algo bueno en el futuro. Gracias.
Y antes de terminar, también quiero darle muchas gracias al gran equipo que tengo a un lado, porque sin él yo no siguiera. Una líder no sigue sin el gran equipo que tenemos al lado. Así es que muchas gracias a Mary Warner, muchas gracias a Ángeles, bueno, sin fin, Jessie, Reina. Estoy tan emocionada que hay muchas, pero a todas. Muchas gracias. Este triunfo es también para ustedes. Gracias.
Sí, una foto. Claro. Sí. Another big round of applause for our amazing awardees. And sorry for those folks watching at home, our Latinas have to get those photos in. So, all right, so continuing on, I know we are closing our time here together on the live stream, but here in the room, we are gonna continue the party with a little bit more music. So hopefully you can catch us in person next time to get the full experience. I've just been so inspired by all the conversations, all the personal stories, the raw truth that really has been shared. I've been having some conversations on the sideline, people really telling us what they're experiencing, and that's really what our leaders who are making these decisions need to hear. So we cannot stress enough that the power in our voice, and even more so, the power in our voices when we come together. Here with Moms Clean Air Force and EcoMadres and many of our leaders in the room, we have talked about maternal and child health, the rising cost of heat and energy, the power of storytelling, and the leadership of Latinas driving climate solutions. Each discussion reminded us that our communities are not only vulnerable, but also resilient, and that protecting families means protecting the most impacted among us, especially our children. At Moms Clean Air Force, we remain focused on ensuring our families, especially pregnant mothers, children, and frontline communities, are protected from the dangerous impacts of pollution and climate change. I hope the conversations today inspired some action, and truly want to thank everybody in the room, everybody tuning in online for joining us for this special occasion. This event would not be possible without so many folks that I cannot name in this short amount of time, but I want to give a special shout out to Make the Road Nevada for opening up their home and space to our community. Yeah, huge shout out. To our amazing partners at Chispa Nevada, who I can't see right now, but huge round of applause. They have been a long time and trusted partner along with us in the fight for clean air and children's health. And also want to thank Desde Nevada and El Nevadense, or the Nevada, who have been graciously supporting our community through their media, through their socials, through just promoting this event. So thank you kindly for that. And lastly, but not least important, I would like to thank Anabel Granados for providing official interpretation today so that our folks in the room could have access to these important conversations. So while this concludes our time online, I hope that these conversations continue long after today. Please be sure you stay connected with us. Make sure to check out our stories on Instagram at EcoMadres_. Be sure to sign our petitions. Petitions are important. They actually make a difference, and they do reach your legislators, your decision makers, and be inspired to take action beyond this conversation today. Thank you again for being part of our second annual EcoMadres Summit, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.